Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well.
Y'all, it's 85 degrees in my house. I should have gone to campus.
Please stay hydrated.
Okay, I think we should get started. I call this meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Javier,
Yeah, can I please strike burn advocacy grant allocations and grows allocations?
Alicia,
Can I please strike ARC allocations, please?
Sheridan,
Can I please strike SFS allocations?
Nico,
Can I strike BOD allocations?
Kiara,
Can I please strike SWC programming allocations?
and Chris Espino.
May I strike the travel grant mini fund and then the ASRF?
Javier, another one.
Yeah, am I able to add a special presentation on the 2024 UCSA campaigns? And if possible, can I have it happen after our appointments?
After ARC appointments? Yeah, that should be fine. Josh,
Hi, can I please add Sophia Wayne to appointments? And then can I also move Natalie Kim to second on our appointments list?
yes. Is Lucy here? don't think Lucy's here. Okay, we need a motion to approve the agenda. Could someone please motion?
I motion to approve the August 6th, the USAC agenda.
Second.
Robbie motions, have your seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 12-0 vote, that motion passes and the agenda is approved. I believe we have minutes we have to approve from July 23rd. If someone could motion for those. Tamim.
Motion to approve minutes from July 23rd, 2024.
Any seconds?
I second.
Who was that? Kiara.
Oh, it was me.
Okay. Tamim motions and Kiara seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 13-0 vote, that motion passes and the minutes are approved. We're now going to move on to public comments. And just a reminder, public comment is for members of the association who wish to address the council on non-agenda items. We have 30 minutes allocated and each public commenter gets 2 minutes to speak once. And just some community guidelines: challenge ideas, not individuals. Use gender inclusive and respectful language. And no dehumanizing language. With that, is there anyone in the Zoom that's here for public comments? Please raise your hand now. Seeing as there are none for public comment, I'm going to be closing public comment at 6:09 p.m. and moving on to funding allocations. Both Lucy and Alex are not here. Are there any proxies for either Lucy or Alex? I don't think so. So we'll move on to appointments, starting with J board appointments with Alessandra. Could you please raise your hand? Josh, could we promote here? Hey, Alessandra. Just a quick reminder of how this works. You have a 1-minute introduction followed by a 15-minute question and answer period, then a 1-minute closing statement. We'll then hear ARC's recommendations, have council deliberations, and then vote. So whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute opening statement.
All right, my name's Alessandra Lachica. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently a junior transfer from Pasadena City College, and I'm hoping to double major in political science and philosophy. And I'm applying to become a justice on UCLA's judicial board because one day I do want to pursue law, and I think this is just about, the most hands-on that you can get. And, I do want to be a part of this organization because I want to give back to the student community and ensuring that students are receiving fair and equal treatment and that they're being heard when they believe that their rights that they're given have been infringed on. And overall, I think I'd be a good fit for this position because of my transfer background and my background in student government back at Pasadena City College. I was actually on the Supreme Council, which is like the judicial board adjacent over there, and they worked in a similar way, but they had more of a legislative role compared to like a reactionary role here. But I still think what I've learned there can apply to what I could do on the judicial board.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to a 15-minute question and answer period. And I'd like to start. Given your previous experience with judicial bodies at your previous community college, how do you think that will translate over to UCLA? And is there anything you would like to do differently?
I think with regards to the first question, I was a part of the judicial board there as well as the lobbying committee. And so what I've learned there is I've been able to really like interact with the students in a very intimate way. I've been able to ask questions, receive answers that they might not feel comfortable giving in like a public setting. And I think that that I've learned really how to interact with students in such a way that I know what kind of needs that they want or needs that they need for, you know, people like me to represent them for. And I think that is translatable in the sense that I can truly, you know, understand the students. If they're petitioning for something, I could truly empathize with them. I can understand their needs, their wants, and what they feel is unfair and how they feel like they've been treated unfairly in that regard. I'm sorry, if you could hear music, I'm like leaving rehearsal to do this right now, but I'm sorry. And things I do differently, I think, pretty hard question. I don't think there was anything like that was egregiously terrible that happened at the Supreme Council back at PCC. I guess one thing that I would like to do more is have more of like a collaborative effort, because I feel like back in the Supreme Council at PCC, there were some people who were pulling their weight and some people that weren't. And I'm a very big person on teamwork and cooperation. So I think that ensuring that everyone is really pulling their weight, especially in a team setting such as the judicial board, I think that would be something that I would want to change.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council members? Seeing as there are none. Oh, Kiara, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself and your background. The question I want to ask you is, for decisions made by the elections board, if you would serve in this position, if there are disagreements, while serving in this role, what is your approach to navigating that and understand the perspective of the students, the different perspectives of the matter?
I'm so sorry. Do you mind repeating the last part of your question? I think it was cutting out on my end.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to ask, what would be your approach to there being disagreement or discourse regarding decisions made by the election board, or understanding the student's perspective or just the various perspectives within a matter if there's disagreement or discourse while in the position?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, I'm actually like at a marching band rehearsal thing, and I've been doing it for the past 3 months. I've been around the same people for about 80 days doing rehearsal, like 10 hours a day. And I'm around these people a lot. And, you know, we have one goal in mind, which is to be like the greatest musicians that we can be. And with that, it comes with a lot of contention, because we all are striving towards the same goal, but we have different ways of going about it. And I think that's one thing that I've really taken to heart, and that I think everyone has the best intentions. Everyone has the best intentions for each other, and it might not show because there are different ways of going about it for each person. So one thing that I've learned here, and I feel like I could translate that if I were to be appointed into the judicial board, is that I've really learned how to listen for the sake of listening rather than listening for the sake of responding, if that makes sense. And I feel like I'd be able to, you know, take their perspective and take it into account while also ensuring that, you know, my voice, my opinions aren't being drowned out by the other person, and vice versa. I think that I've learned here in like a musical setting how to synthesize different ideas into one cohesive idea, and ensuring that we're all in agreement about something. And I think that I'll be able to, again, translate these skills into the judicial board. For example, like it's kind of a niche thing, but I do play this cymbal, so we do a lot of like visuals and stuff. So we all have different ideas of what we want to put here, what do we want to do here, and we all have our different reasons as to why. And so our method in ensuring that everyone's has a little taste of their own thing inside our show is that we each go down the line, we explain ourselves, we hear each other's perspectives, and we try to create something that has incorporates everyone's perspective. And again, sometimes it just doesn't work, and you do have to realize that maybe that you're in the wrong. And I think that I've really honed in on those types of skills this past like few months, and I think that it'll be translatable.
Are there any final questions from council members? Seeing as there are none, Alessandra, whenever you're ready, your 1-minute closing statement.
All right. So I just wanted to just talk about more about the judicial board. and why I really want to be a part of it. So again, like I said earlier, I do hope to become a lawyer and honestly, eventually become a judge. And I spent the past few weeks just reading a bunch of the opinions that the judicial board has written, and I think that it has really, really interesting stuff. And there's a level of professionalism and a level of attention to detail that I think that I would be able to uphold if I were to join. And additionally, I think that, or like I said earlier in the question, I do think that my teamwork and cooperation skills that I really feel like I've honed in on these past few months for me would be really helpful for the judicial board in that just adding a layer of teamwork and cooperation and ensuring that everyone's voices are heard. But yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to ARC's recommendations. Josh, or whoever is giving it today, please go ahead.
Yes. Alessandra presented an exemplary interview with ARC. ARC was particularly impressed with Alessandra's level of knowledge of the judicial board and their prior cases, especially given the fact that they are an incoming transfer and new to UCLA. We are additionally excited to see that Alessandra has served in a similar capacity before, as she was an associate justice on our community college's judicial board. With a 3-0 vote, ARC highly recommends Alessandra for this appointment.
Thank you, Josh. We're now going to move into council deliberations. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say, any comments or questions before we move to vote? No comments? Okay, then could someone please, Javier.
Yeah, I guess I'll just quickly comment that, Alessandra, I really appreciated your, I guess, interview with us today here and everything. It's really amazing to see yet another amazing transfer here, applying for one of our appointments. And I really appreciate all the perspective that you had to offer, even while being an incoming student to UCLA. So I'm looking very forward to all the work that you do.
Thank you, Javier. Are there any other comments? Could someone please motion then to appoint Alessandra to, yeah, Josh, go ahead.
I motion to appoint Alessandra Lachica as an alternate member to the judicial board.
Any seconds?
I second.
Josh motions, Tamim seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 13-0 vote, that motion passes and Alessandra is appointed to the judicial board. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
We're now going to move on to the Community Activities Committee with Natalie Kim. Natalie, whenever you're ready, please, your 1-minute opening statement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a rising junior, and I'm currently double majoring in computational biology and political science. And the position I am applying for is the Community Activities Committee undergraduate representative. And something I would like to do if I were to be promoted for this position is to continue promoting for transparency as well as equity within the committee, especially because as a member this past year, I realized that sometimes communication can be rough between the clubs and the CAC members. So I hope to strengthen that communication between both parties, as well as be able to allow clubs to reach out to us and better assist them in terms of funding and also assisting them with their community service projects. I also hope to expand upon the platforms in which we are promoted on, such as social media like Instagram or Gmail, just being able to promote more of CAC.
Thank you, Natalie. We're now going to move on to council member questions. I have a couple of questions to start. Could you briefly elaborate on more specifically what you did on CAC last year in terms of your specific duties and roles?
Yeah, for sure. So this past year was my first time on the CAC board, and I served as first a liaison to roughly 14 to 17 clubs. Unfortunately, one of the clubs they disbanded, so that's why it kind of knocked down. But As a liaison, some of my duties included, but not were limited to, I got to check in with the clubs, especially those who received funding the CAC annual. And I also got to join in on their meetings, whether that was their board general or even their community service projects. So I got to see in person or sometimes on Zoom, like how their club was operating and how those funds were being allocated. And I also ensured that those funds were being allocated properly, so there was no handling of those funds. I also served as a member to the hearings. So one of the things that CAC members do is that we participate in the hearings as well as the review portion afterwards. So I got to partake in that and also get a different perspective in terms of like what the clubs need and what type of funding is being allocated, as well as helping clubs adjust so that they can be more successful in the next application cycle.
Thank you. And one more question. What's something that you did last year that you'd like to change, or something that you didn't do that you'd like to start doing?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned in my introduction as well, but something that I realized after club talking with the clubs that I am the liaison for is that there's sometimes confusions with the funding. So for example, we have mini and annual, which are two different types of funding, and also the requirements are different. And I think oftentimes some of the clubs were not aware that they can apply for mini, especially like several times throughout the year, because we have one for each quarter. And so just being more transparent with that communication. And also, I think I want to take more advantage of our social media because I know my predecessors, they started the social media, especially during the COVID period, when we couldn't have in-person hearings, which is why this past year we were transitioned to online hearings. But just being able to utilize that more and also maybe collaborating with USAC or the body that's in control of like sending information to the students on campus, because I hope to allow more clubs to take advantage of the funding and not know that they're not alone when it comes to like funding for their community service projects. So whether that means like making our Instagram more active or finding a different outlet to share the information, I think that will be helpful. I do know we have webinars. My supervisor did inform me about that, but I hope to just make sure that there's more source of communication just beyond the webinars, because those are probably maybe once a quarter. It's not just frequent enough where clubs can come in and just ask questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any other council members that have questions? Kiara?
Hi there. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself and your background. My question that I want to ask you is, I know you talked about how you plan to engage with students, taking from your prior experience as well, and student groups. But I wanted to ask you, what is your approach to ensuring that the committee is engaging with service groups that look at different populations or various needs, making sure that it's a broad and diverse contribution to different efforts around student groups on campus. So ensuring that it's uplifting the work of various and diverse populations.
Yeah, for sure. That is definitely a good question. So actually, this year I was a liaison to many like minor groups on campus. So, for example, like Yolo Tsonyo, United Khmer, Students Society. I was also a liaison for like Latinas guiding Latinas. So those are just some examples of like minority groups that I was in communication with. And something that I realized is while talking with these club members, I do realize that these fundings are helping uplift and also empower these students to help contribute to not only their community, but also fellow students who also wish to promote their background, whether it's like ethnic, social economic backgrounds, or just in general, like bridging the gap between UCLA students and the community, or within UCLA students as well. So I just hope to like continue strengthening my communication in that aspect, because I do realize that oftentimes like you can feel lonely, and I do feel like it may sound repetitive, but it's really just I feel like the simple solution in most of these cases is that just making myself available and ensuring that like the club members fully utilize all aspects of CAC, and not just, we just check in once a quarter where it's just for the hearings, and at the end of the school year, just making sure like it's consistent throughout the year, and ensuring that also like other community service project groups are also aware of these community service projects, because prior to me being a CAC member, I was also not aware of these like diverse ethnic or social socioeconomic groups that are present on campus. So I was also enlightened, and I think that also helped me to fight for their like advocate for them when I met with other CAC representatives and my supervisor.
Alicia?
How will you help support cultural orgs that what's it called? Do not receive funding or as much funding as they need for various programs like culture shows or graduations or whatchamacallit, or showcases, etc. How do you help to navigate the very difficult parts of like allocating and advising to orgs that need this funding, but because there is not enough to give to orgs, how do you help navigate these things with them? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So CAC within CAC, unfortunately, we do not support cultural shows because that's under CPC, which is our sister organization. So I did get questions from time to time for allocation funding where it's not applicable within CAC body because CAC focuses on community service projects. So whether it's within that aspect or field, we definitely will try to cover as much as we can. And each quarter when we have the funding allocations for annual, it's our biggest one. It's actually the deadline passed, but it was 10K. So that's our biggest funding. And then we have our mini allocations, which are each roughly like 3.5K a quarter. So I definitely would recommend clubs, especially cultural clubs, to refer to that if they do have like community service projects where they're going to use those funding and allocate it towards their community service projects. But I do know for cultural shows, they often do run into that barrier where they're not able to receive that much funding. Because I was also in a cultural show program. I was part of the Korean Culture Night. And as a CAC member, unfortunately, the only thing that I would be able to do is like help them to refer to other types of funding that will help them directly with their showcase, such as CPC. So I think my approach for in terms of like cultural shows or events that are not related to community service projects, I would try to help them to like refer them to experts who are responsible for those types of funding, or maybe other individuals who can help them to allocate to other resources. But if it's within the CAC realm, I'll definitely like help them to reach out to the correct sources, or even myself, like ask my supervisor, which I've also done several times this past year to ensure that funding is being allocated.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Natalie. Whenever you're ready, please your 1 minute closing statement.
Yeah, so I hope to just expand upon, like I mentioned in the beginning and throughout my presentation, I just hope to expand on this communication aspect in order to touch the transparency and the equity and just ensure that more clubs are able to receive their funding reasonably, but also just be able to be in touch with us and have more communication. And I hope that this year, because this is our second year out in which we're doing online hearings and just transitioning more back into in-person from the COVID period, I hope to like interact with more clubs. So if I am promoted again as CAC representative, that's one of my main goals, like to be more active and interactive with the clubs and ensure that their voices are being heard when it comes to our hearings, or their concerns are also being allocated to the correct people to ensure that our funding is being allocated at better places, as well as allowing more people to have more hands-on activities so that they can flourish their community service clubs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Could we now get to ARC's recommendations, please?
Yes. Natalie presented a strong interview to ARC, receiving a 3-0 vote. ARC was very impressed with Natalie's experience on the committee last year, having served as a liaison for 17 student organizations. We are excited to see what Natalie will do in the committee this year. Particularly, we're looking forward to seeing what Natalie will do to make their funding more accessible, with her goals of improving outreach to student organizations and increasing social media activity.
Thank you, Josh. We're now going to move on to council deliberations. Do any council members have any comments or concerns before we move on to voting? If we have none, could someone please motion to appoint Natalie. Motion, please. Tamim.
Motion to appoint Natalie Kim as the CAC member for the academic year 2024-2025.
Second.
Tamim motions, Josh seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 13-0 vote, that motion passes, and Natalie is appointed to the Community Activities Committee for the 24-25 academic year. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to our second and final judicial board spot with Eli Spaldeva. Hey Eli, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute opening statement.
Hello, my name is Eli Sepulveda. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm a junior year transfer, and I'm studying international development studies. And I'm applying for the USAC Judicial Board. I'm interested in this role because I believe I possess relevant skills and experiences that would enable me to positively contribute to our student body. At my prior institution, I was involved in the Associated Student Government as a justice in a really similar capacity, where I helped oversee election code and club policy compliance and officer conduct. And I understand that this position will demand impartiality and a complete understanding of the USAC Constitution, bylaws, and election code. And I believe I'm equipped to properly uphold these standards. Additionally, I believe being a transfer student with a diverse background and applicable experience and familiarity with judicial process enables me to effectively serve our student body. And I would really hope to bring these skills to the judicial board this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. We're now going to move on to the 15-minute question and answer period by council members. Do any council members have any questions for Eli? Eli, how do you think your experience at your prior institution will translate in terms of skills and more applicable skills that you can bring to the judicial board at UCLA?
Yeah, I feel like my past experience as a justice has a lot of really important parallels with the role here at UCLA, specifically in the election codes. At my prior institution, the judicial board was largely involved in ensuring that candidates were adhering to the election codes, and it was up to us to address infractions. And I took a look through the official rules of the board, and it seems that that is one of the duties of this board, and I think that there's a clear translation there. Additionally, I also got comfortable with the reality that every decision that the board makes will have a ripple effect towards the future. And so it's really forced me to think in a very impartial and long-term type of way that I think could be very beneficial to being on this board.
Eli, Chris Espino.
Can you talk about a moment when you came to a realization and what that moment taught you?
Yeah. During the fall election cycle at my prior institution, we had a moment where a student had requested a extra day for campaigning that other students were not allowed. And their reasoning was because of a religious holiday they had that fell on a school day that did not allow them to continue campaigning on that day. And so at first it was a very compelling reason personally, but then upon further discussion with the rest of the judicial board, it became evident that as a public institution, we couldn't really make types of exceptions like that for one student's religious practice, because there were also other students within the candidates who also had religious holidays that were not getting that same treatment. And so it became a matter of fairness that the school had was not able to accommodate that because as a public institution, we couldn't show favoritisms in terms of religion. And that was like a real realization for me where it was like, I really have to stop and think about not just like, I can't just go off of like first thought as a lot of us would like to. I think that when you first hear the story, you're compelled really to side with the student, but then you have to take a moment and really think about the implications of what your decision will be. And that was like a tough realization for me at the start of my term last year that really framed the rest of what that that term session was like, where we had to be thinking long term. What is the ripple effect of every decision we make? How will that affect the next cycle of candidates?
Thank you for your response.
Any further questions? Given there's no more questions, Eli, whenever you're ready, please present your 1-minute closing statement.
Quite frankly, I want to just start by saying thank you for taking into consideration my application. I am someone who, when I commit to something, I commit wholeheartedly, and I want to just give the statement and affirmation that if awarded this position, I would commit wholeheartedly to it, and I would dedicate myself to upholding the standards of this board and also making it a priority. I'm someone who likes to get very involved on campus, but the value of those involvements are nothing if none of it is very meaningful and if I can't go in depth. And so personally, if I'm awarded the position, I want to give my personal commitment to each and every one of you that I would be giving this my top effort and priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Could we now get ARC's recommendations, please?
Yes, Eli had an excellent interview with ARC, receiving a 2-0 to 1 vote. ARC was impressed with Eli's experience, having served as a justice in their CC and being responsible for candidate conduct, election code, and policy issues with clubs. ARC is excited to see Eli's work on the judicial board this year, especially with their goals to maintain impartiality while ensuring that all students can feel supported when bringing forth petitions.
Thank you, Josh. Do any council members have any comments or concerns?
In terms of comments, I guess this is one. I abstained during the ARC interview, and I'll be abstaining today again, as I knew Eli during our time in community college, both in a more professional capacity, I guess, in terms of like being in the same student organization, as well as in a more personal capacity as a result of our involvement in that student organization. I will say Eli's involvement in the judicial board at their community college and her involvement in the student organization that we were both in together really demonstrated the values that I believe would be a good quality for judicial board. And I believe we saw this with both of the applicants who we've interviewed here tonight, with both of their experiences on the judicial board at their community colleges, bringing forth a great experience that I think would really help address some of the concerns that we've discussed in the past meetings about judicial board and their role moving forward. So I'm excited to see the future of J board this year.
Thank you, Mona. And just a reminder to all council members to raise your hand before speaking to be called on. Are there any other, no problem. Are there any other comments or concerns before we move to voting? With that, could we please get a motion? Josh?
I motion to appoint Eli Sepulveda as an alternate member of the judicial board for that upcoming academic year.
I second that motion.
Josh motions, Chris Espino seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 13-0 to 1, with a 12-0 to 1 vote, that motion passes and Eli is appointed to the judicial board. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our fourth appointment of the night with the ASUCLA Comms Board, Kristen. Hey, Kristen, whenever you're ready, your 1 minute opening statement.
I would like, before I start the 1 minute, can you hear me or is it the music is really loud?
You're perfectly fine, no worries.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello everyone. My name is Kristen. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a rising junior, and I'm majoring in political science. I'm applying for the communications board member position, as I believe now more than ever, it's so important to protect student media and journalists. And I also think it's so important to make sure student voices are heard through the student media. What I believe makes me a good fit to be a board member is that I've been a board member for the past 2 years on the comms board, and I believe I have a solid understanding of the ins and outs of the comms board, as well as student media in general. And also, I feel like that with my experience and background, I feel like I can make decisions that are for the best interests of student media, as well as working towards making sure that the board is working towards the betterment of all the student population as a whole, as well as continuing to protect student media. And I hope I can continue my role as a board member of the comms board, ensuring that student voices are heard and student media considerations are considered.
Thank you, Kristen. We're now going to move on to the 15-minute Q&A period. I have a couple of questions, so I'd like to start with one. The first one being, could you briefly elaborate on some more specifics on what you did within comms board over the past 2 years?
Yes, of course. As being on the comms board for the past 2 years, I've been a board member, so I've been someone who has helped appoint the editor-in-chief. I've also been on multiple committees working on financial, but also on the executive board because I was the chair of the board this past year, in which I made decisions on behalf of student media, especially in regards to student safety. And I've also made decisions on other things in regards to like making sure students are protected on campus in light of the recent events that happened on campus. And then I've also attended board meetings for more info and help make decisions on constitutions, as well as making decisions on behalf of student media and always considering student media perspective.
Chris Espino.
Recently, and perhaps in previous years. Well, first and foremost, it's nice to see you again, Kristen. How rude of me. Recently and in most and I'm certain that in previous years we've seen false advertising by certain groups. My question for you is, how will you combat disinformation, the spread of disinformation?
Thank you. That's a great question. And combating disinformation is one of the things that are just highly important to the comms board. And I think with combating disinformation, it's one of the things that we've had to consider a lot in comms board. And we've always want to make sure that we side on the behalf of student media, that we make sure that not only our student media feel that they're supported and that they are protected, we always stand on behalf of student media, but we also make sure that they have the network, the support, and as well the mentors in place to ensure that when something does happen to student media and have to combat disinformation, they have the sources, they have the legal support in place to ensure that they're able to combat everything and feel like that they're not standing alone, especially when disinformation does happen.
Sorry, Christian, just a clarification. Did you say that you'll always side with student media?
Yes, comms board will always side on student media and editors-in-chief in any capacity. It doesn't matter what.
Even if that editor or editor-in-chief has committed perhaps acts of disinformation or potentially putting out dangerous information on other members of the community?
If in that case, then it would be a good discussion to have. A good discussion with that. I mean, I'm sorry. That thing was more of like outside external sources, but if you mean internal sources of that sort of disinformation, I think it's important that, especially if it is disinformation from an editor-in-chief, that we always have a conversation with them, because we take that extremely important, especially if maybe discriminatory towards another group. We don't always side with the editor-in-chief in that case, because as student media, it's supposed to be representative of student voices. I believe that's so important, especially I don't know if we have raised that consideration before, but if that does happen, I will always want to make sure that it's never hateful to another group. And if it involves another student magazine or a student group, we will always have the conversation to hear both sides and make decisions on the facts of the case and not always side with the student editor-in-chief in that case, which I think we've had done before.
Thank you. Alicia?
How will you stand up in support of the rights of students to protest, especially in light of, UC Regent decisions like J2, as well as like encroachments on our rights to protest? And how will you help support Palestinian students, Muslim students, especially in light of all the harassment that they faced in the past year and even for decades, because this issue has been happening for over 76 years now. But yeah, how will you hope to do that and represent that within ASUCLA Communications Board? And how will you um, communicate to other student orgs and be in touch with the other publications and mother organizations and UC Divest representatives to ensure that things are being represented right? And also, my other question is, how will you fight to mitigate doxing and bring that issue up with the ASUCLA Communications Board? Because I know that people within student media organizations under student media have faced this issue because there are Zionists trying to achieve the doxing of students. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I'm sorry. The first question was, could you like repeat that again? I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure that I clearly answered your question in a way that ensures that I give you a good answer. I'm so sorry. That was a really great question, and you went through so much, and I want to answer it correctly.
Okay, yeah. And basically, how will you stand up and represent student issues in terms of media coverage on issues like the Palestinian genocide, the various other genocides occurring across the world, and issues affecting our students, especially given the type of reporting that occurred last year through major media outlets like the Daily Bruin? And how will you will you be in touch with student orgs like UC Divest, as well as many other mother orgs who are in need of direct support in terms of media representation within our own student-run organizations? That is just like a question of whether or not you're going to, as well as how will you bring up issues of like regent decisions such as J2, as well as current events that are or proposals to have mask bans during a pandemic because of protests, and then potential banning of encampments and other forms of protests on campuses. I just want to know how you will represent these issues in the ASUCLA Communications Board and how you go about supporting students.
No, thank you. That's a great question. And as the ASUCLA Comms Board, I do want to clarify that we really make decisions, especially when a student organization has issues with media coverage. And so in regards to the issues you bring up of coverage of the Palestine genocide, as well as the other considerations like regent decisions in J2, it's something that I would want to personally have conversations with editors-in-chief about. I think that I can't, as ASUCLA Comms Board, I can't force them to make specific coverages, nor can I force them to cover something a specific way, because we allow student media to express and write anything that they report. I do want to make that, but I think that the concerns you bring up of student voices, of making sure that organizations feel like they have a voice in student media and that student media is covering them, are talks that we have all the time in Comms Board. And I want to have those conversations again with editors in chief that maybe we can't ask them to do them, but we can definitely have discussions. Like, we want them to collaborate more with each other. We want them to have more diverse perspectives within their own organization, because that has been an issue in the past, as well as wanting to make sure that when we are having conversations with them, that maybe we bring up that people have concerns about, like, in maybe that have concerns from other student orgs that, hey, they want more coverage, how will you cover this? Making sure that there's more transparency routes in that regards. And of course, that in issues of like media coverage, that maybe students are feeling dogs, that unfortunately with journalistic standards we have, that we have to sometimes keep up posts that may keep students in danger. But it's definitely a conversation I want to have comms board, because it is an issue I don't feel quite comfortable to uphold as on the comms board, because journalism, we have to do so. But I want to go forward, maybe have those conversations with student media, that perhaps we can take a more lenient route with coverage, because we are putting students in risk, and I don't feel comfortable doing that as a student myself. And I want to make sure that students feel safe on campus, feel like they can express themselves in student media, and that we definitely want to make sure coverage looks towards and takes advantage of and represents all student organizations, not just one voice, and that students feel like they can put out coverage that they feel safe and confident about. I don't know if I answered your question, because I'm trying to toe a line of what ASUCLA Comms Board can do, but I definitely think those conversations are important. And I definitely want to increase transparency for and awareness of student media, that for ASUCLA, our Comms Board meetings are open to the public. And I definitely would love to have student organizations come to those public comments, because editors in chief are sometimes present to say, hey, the coverage you're doing for this and this and that, we want improvements, we want better. What are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with some of these disinformations that we feel like are happening? So I definitely think that there's so much more open to discussion. And I do hope I answered your question. And I'm sorry if I'm yelling in any way, shape, or form. I'm trying to fight off some music, so I'm so sorry.
Alicia, do you have a follow-up?
I have a few. In response to really briefly you saying that people should go to the meetings, I think that's kind of I don't know, it's kind of disrespectful to students and student time, just based off the fact that people share their reactions and their quarrels with the way student media, primarily Daily Bruin, amongst other media outlets, represent what is happening to students and what is happening around the world. And so like it's very visible, like it's very, very visible to see dissent against what these editors are putting forth with our, our funding, student funding to, run these publications. I don't think that, I feel like if anything, the reason we appoint is to, have you bring these issues up as a person on the table, with, the power to speak up on these things. But I digress. My follow-up questions is that there are some issues that I've heard from students, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, about like literal, like, like, but, how do I say this? Pressure from ASUCLA, like ASUCLA career employees, in terms of like wanting to have student information on websites. And like personally, I think that when it comes to doxing, I'm not talking about the journalists themselves. I'm talking about the students they dox. I'm talking about the students that like they represent in their outlets, or people, because I think that aside from the other thing I mentioned, I'm talking about, because I've personally been victim of it. So like I like and okay, maybe sorry. My point is, how will you sorry, I'm like rambling because this is really important. But in terms of like sorry, okay. maybe I don't have to ask that question. Okay, this is my question. Because you say that like the most you have bandwidth for in this position is like to have these conversations. I think too that the the most major part of your role is that like one of the most powerful pieces of your role is that you can defund student media. You can make executive decisions to defund and or remove editors. And so my question for you is like, where do you draw the line when, you know, these editors are not doing what student demands, you know, are demanding of them to do? And yeah, like how do you view yourself in you know, executing that role if needed?
No, thank you so much, Alicia. And no means when I mean going to the meetings, I did not want it to be like disrespectful to any students in their time. I think the issues you brought up are things that I have, it has not come to UCLA Communication Board attention. It's something that I realize has been a fatal part of my part as being on the board's member, that I should be more aware and I should be more considering aware of these issues. And I think that what you say about with my power to, of course, oversee student media and defund them, that it's definitely conversations we should have with them, because we do have like one-on-one meetings with editors in chief with all of them. And I think I would love to put up these issues to them. And I'm sorry, I only have 9 seconds to answer the question, but I think it's definitely a conversation I would love to have with other comms board members and bring up in our subsequent meetings. I'm so sorry I couldn't answer your question more.
So I believe we're going to extend our time further. We're just confirming whether we have to motion for it or whether it's at my discretion, if either Jessica or Jonathan know off the top of their head.
Yes, you should motion and vote to extend time and be specific with how long you want to extend. So motion for 5 minutes or however long you think is sufficient to continue the questions.
Sounds good. Javier?
I motion to extend the time for the specific appointment interview for 5 minutes.
I second.
Javier motions, Josh seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 13 to 0 vote, that motion passes, and we're going to extend time by 5 minutes. Kristen, if you want to continue answering Alicia's question, you can go ahead. If not, we'll continue with other questions.
I'm so sorry. Alicia, can you say your last part of your question again?
Yeah, given that you have the power to in this position to at will, at necessity to defund student publications and talk about the budget of media, as well as potentially put on the table a removal of a chief or an editor-in-chief. Yeah, how where do you like draw the line of like this is what student demands are, where too much harm is too much harm, and if you'd ever, you know, feel comfortable with doing that as a person, as an appointment to the communications board?
Well, I would like to say that I would be comfortable to do so, but I am in the position of power to, like, of course, to defund publication as well as remove an editor-in-chief. And it's really hard to draw that line, not because I don't, of course, support everything you say. It's just, of course, having that conversation with other comms board members, especially when many of them are former journalists themselves. And I think drawing the line is really like, maybe I wouldn't defund them if it's misinformation, but it's something I would severely punish. We put some of like editors in chief, if they're not, like, for example, even if they're not performing on like what I don't explain this, but we do like watch them and make sure, like, if you ever do misinformation again, if you ever lie to us, which is a concern, we will of course take your editors in chief position away. Like, we won't immediately remove them, but like considerations of removal of the funding are something we definitely consider taking place, especially if it's misinformation, lying, or doing discriminatory or publishing things that are hateful to other groups. And so I'm very comfortable to draw that line over there and even remove an editor-in-chief. But that is also a conversation I need to have with other comms board members, and it's a really hard conversation to have with them because many of them, of course, want to defend student media, but there always has to be a line, especially when it comes to other student safety, not just journalists, which has been a concern this year, and making sure that what we put out again is representing the student population, and that we are trying to protect student media, but also students as well on campus.
Kristen, one final question from Mia. Comms board is responsible for the most part on setting the budgets for different student media organizations. And we have a lot of organizations on campus, many of which represent minority groups such as Al Talib or La Gente. However, these groups combined receive a fraction of what Daily Bruin receives in budgetary allocations. Do you have any plans to change this, or is this a concern for you at all?
I think, yes, I definitely would want to increase funding. Again, that is with permission with the other comms board, but I think so, especially since like them or Outright or La Gente are all producing amazing magazines. And it's something that I think going into next year is a conversation we do have, because Daily Bruin is the biggest, but you have other magazines putting up exceptional work as well, consistently exceptional work, just as good as Daily Bruin. And I definitely want to think going into the future, I think that maybe we need to consider increasing budget allocations, increasing money for directors, which is so important because so many students can't get into student media and have their voice heard because of funding and payment restrictions. So it's definitely something I would want to speak with my other comms board members going into the future.
And is this something you've considered over the past 2 years at all, or acted on it at all in the past 2 years?
Not the first year, and not this last year, just because of some internal issues, but it's definitely but for the budget for directors and stuff, it has something we've been considering and talking about increases for several times, and that we just need to have the board speak about it because we have so many changes and so many people don't always come to the comms board. But it's definitely a conversation of increasing payments for directors across all different media roles, but conversations of increasing specific magazines is something we haven't considered. But I think this has brought into light more considerations I want to bring to the comms board going forward. And for when the budget is approved, it is approved at the end of every year, end of every like school year.
Thank you, Kristen. We're now going to move on to your 1 minute closing statement. Oh, we have a hand from Chris Spino first. Is it a motion?
No, I'm sorry. I thought that we were moving on to comments.
No, we're going to move on to the 1 minute closing statement by Kristen, followed by ARC and then deliberations. So Kristen, whenever you're ready, your 1 minute closing.
Okay. I'd like to thank everyone, like all of the council members, for your amazing questions tonight. I think they brought up so many concerns that I think I definitely would want to consider and bring up to the comms board if I am appointed in the future. I think all your concerns are so important, and I think it obviously shows that the comms board definitely is not doing enough for the student population. And I think just going forward, that if I am appointed, I want to make comms board better. I want to reach out to more student organizations and have those conversations, student, especially if there's so many concerns that you have all raised that you all don't feel like student media is accurately representing you. That needs to change, obviously. I hope going forward that if I am appointed, I definitely want to foster more transparency, have that time for openness, especially as Alicia brought up, some people can't always make the meetings, and that's so important because those voices need to be heard, to foster more inclusivity within student media and with publication, and have continuous improvement in comms board in the future. So thank you everyone for your amazing questions tonight.
Thank you, Kristen. We're now going to move on to ARC's deliberations.
Yes. During Kristen's ARC interview, Kristen demonstrated that she is very experienced, having served on the comms board for the past 2 years and serving as the chair. ARC was excited to see some of Kristen's goals for next year, including supporting media outside of larger publications and improving transparency efforts with the student body. However, there were some concerns as holding student media and media organization leaders accountable was not addressed thoroughly during the interview, leading to a 1-to-1-to-1 vote from the Appointments Review Committee.
Thank you, Josh. We're now going to move to council deliberations. If any council members have any comments or concerns, please raise your hands. We'll go Chris, Javier, then Josh.
I will be abstaining from this vote because Kristen served in AAC last year and I knew her professionally.
Javier?
I will also be abstaining from this role. I worked with Kristen in a professional capacity last year, and she's also in my office this year.
Josh?
I will also be abstaining from this vote. Kristen was on my campaign team last year, and I also worked with her in IVP last year. She was a director. I will just say that when Kristen was in IVP last year, she really did a tremendous job with her role. She filled a director position when someone was removed from our office last year, and she helped plan some of our largest initiatives really successfully. She planned our off-campus housing fair and was also responsible for allocating funds for our housing and rent relief fund, and she just did a tremendous job at both those events. So I will say that about her.
Alicia?
I will say that I will be voting no just because of the responses that I've heard today. I appreciate the work you've done for Comm Board, but like in the past year, there have been like conversations surrounding like defunding the Daily Bruin and the way that media is representing student affairs and student issues. And I just feel like if you are in touch with like USAC conversations and meetings and just in touch with the UCLA community, you would like know that and do something. And then overall the communications board, not just you, but I just feel like if in 2 years like there hasn't been considerations about defunding the Daily Bruin or reinvesting into more into the MO ran or like MO affiliated student media outlets as well. I just feel like, yeah, I just wouldn't feel voting. I wouldn't feel comfortable voting, but I appreciate your efforts and your responses and your time today. Thank you.
Bueno?
Yeah, so during the ARC interview, I voted no, particularly because I noted throughout several times, or at least twice during the interview, like the tendency to stray towards initially protecting student media and also a lack of touching upon the aspect of accountability in a specific question about transparency, accountability, and equity. I had hoped to see that kind of addressed and those fears of the lack of regulation be addressed in this interview. And while I didn't ask any specific questions in this interview, I don't think they were really touched on by the other council members who did ask questions regarding that. And considering that in the preamble of the comms board constitution, it says that this constitution was established to, and I quote, promote, maintain, and regulate student communication media, like end quote. I don't feel confident in changing my vote. I've met Kristen a couple times in the past year because of both of us being in the IVP office. And while I never got a chance to know her more personally or work very much together, I know that I just want to express that while I'll be continuing to vote no in this vote as well as I did in the ARC interview, I believe their talents and their efforts would be better directed in a different place or better suited for another effort. Just perhaps not this one, as I just mentioned, for the reasons of accountability and regulating of student media.
Kiara?
Yeah. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing about your experience and answering all of the questions. Today, I just want to be transparent. I'm sorry about my notifications. Make sure those are off. Just want to be transparent about my vote. I believe I will be voting no, just on the matter of I think there is an importance with the focus on holding student media accountable throughout the year and while working with them, making sure that we are, looking at objectively like how the position and perspectives of students around campus and making sure they're while working with student media, making sure there's also advocating on the student side and making sure they are held and making sure student media is held accountable with the power and abilities that they have. So that is what I is to want to be transparent about my vote today.
Any final comments or concerns before we move to the vote? Seeing as there are none, can we please get a motion? Motion, please. Javier?
I motion to vote on the approval of Kristen Reese for the ACCLA Cons Board.
Any seconds?
I second.
Javier motions, Tamim seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Was that a yes, Chris?
Sorry, no, I put up the wrong time.
All against, please raise your hands. Please lower your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 0 to 10 to 3 vote, unfortunately, we have not met the amount of votes necessary to be appointed. I'm so sorry, Kristen, and I hope we can continue working together in the future. We're now gonna I'm gonna hop off for like 2 minutes and Josh is gonna take the next appointment, but I'll be back.
Sounds good. We're now going to move on to Kimberly Horace Rodriguez for the Community Service Mini Fund Chair. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Kimberly, whenever you're ready, we can get started with your 1-minute introduction.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Juarez Rodriguez. I am a rising second year at UCLA, and I am double majoring in political science. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And today I am before you all today to apply for the CS Mini Fund Committee Chair position. I want to apply for this position because I really enjoyed my time serving in the committee last year. Additionally, I want to address where this all stems from. I believe that my passion and my interest in serving in this committee is based in my passion and interest in serving for my community and volunteering, and overall just trying to uplift underrepresented voices. And I hope that I can continue to do this while serving in this committee as the chair. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. We'll now move on to a 15-minute question and answer period. So if any council members have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Chris Espino.
Yes, I'm on mute. Sorry. Hello, thank you for being here. What qualifications do you think you bring to the table for this specific capacity?
Thank you for your question. To be entirely honest, experience as a chair of a committee, I do not, but various leadership positions and involvement in other student organizations, I do have, where I believe there is a similarity in which we're all trying to uplift voices as well and working as a community as well and as a team. In terms of budgeting and funding, which I know that this committee does do, I would say my time serving in my community at my public library, we did have work where we had to fund and budget for projects that we were doing. An example that comes to mind is a murder mystery event that we did have in my community, and various events throughout the community, like DIA, which is Diversity in Action. We did have to budget some of the funds that we had throughout the entire years to make sure that we had enough money for the projects we wanted to do, candy, prizes for the kids. So I feel like this will all come in handy and will be useful in trying to allocate funds for various clubs and projects during this school year. Thank you.
Javier.
Yeah, so hi, Kimberly. Because the community service mini fund position and everything also works very deeply with the CPO as well, I kind of want to ask, like, what sort of experiences or intentions do you have to bring into this role for this next year in regards to helping support a lot of these student initiated programs, especially a lot of the identity based ones that are housed within the mother organizations as well. and better supporting them in their advocacy and service efforts for this next year.
I believe a huge part of this is actually working together with these mother organizations and these student groups, as well as I believe this is a tied issue also with promoting and making sure that a lot of these clubs and organizations do have knowledge of this fund and of this committee. I do believe that that will be my responsibility, and I will take it on as my responsibility as well to reach out to these clubs and mother organizations, working along with the CPO office to make sure that they're aware of these funds. Emailing, making sure that we can work to make sure that they're also getting the funds, they're also making things happen, and we can all work together to uplift the community and overall the UCLA community.
Chris Ramsey.
Hey, Kimberly. Could you tell us about your ability to be able to settle any disputes that might happen within your team as chair? And it'd be great if you could provide an example of some time that you had a disagreement with somebody or other people had disagreements and you had to be able to mediate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I do believe that that is entirely a really important point. I do think that in order to work well as a team, we have to hear everyone's opinion, even though we might not agree with everyone's opinion at times. I know that I work with the committee hearing everyone's opinion as well on the matter. If we have a disagreement, I'm also open and open-minded to know that if I'm doing something wrong as well, hearing outside voices and opinion as well. Thinking about an experience where I've had a disagreement with somebody, no experiences come to mind, unfortunately, to be able to say a specific experience where I've had to disagree with someone on a committee. Very grateful to say that as well, but I'm sorry.
Do we have any other questions for Kimberly from anyone? Okay, seeing as there are no other questions, Kimberly will move on to your 1-minute concluding statement.
Thank you everyone for your time. First and foremost, yes, thank you. Thank you to the ARC committee as well. Thank you for all the members that presented questions today. I hope I was able to show and showcase some of my passion that I have for serving the community, my motivation and my desire to keep uplifting the community and working towards change and hopefully uplifting our mother organizations as well. I do admit that I don't have entirely experience in being a chair of a position or of a committee, but I hope that I did showcase that I do have the effort and motivation to learn and to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get our recommendations now?
Mona or Diego?
I can give our recommendations. Kimberly presented an excellent interview with ARC. With her experience serving on the CS Mini Fund last year, Kimberly knows the ins and out of the committees and how to best determine allocations. With her passion for community service, having been involved in the CSC, ARC recommends Kimberly to be appointed chair of the CS Mini Fund with a 3-0 vote.
Thank you, Diego. Are there any comments from council members? Javier.
Hi. So Kimberly was actually in EVP with me for a time last year, so I'll have to be abstaining from this vote, fortunately. But I can comment that Kimberly is really earnest and hardworking when it does come to community service efforts. So I can very much speak highly for her.
Karen.
Hi, Kimberly. Hi, everyone. So yes, I am going to be abstaining tonight because I have worked with Kimberly in CSC last year, but I can attest that she is extremely driven, very hardworking, as well as she definitely is great at taking on new challenges, which is why I think she'd be great for the community service mini fund. Not only that, Kimberly has really demonstrated a passion for community service throughout her time in CSC, always taking on new tasks, learning about different aspects of community service, and really interacting closely with the staff and the project. So I highly recommend that you vote yes on Kimberly, and I think she'd make a great CS chair, mini chair.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any other comments or concerns from council members before we move to a vote? Seeing as there are none, can we please get a motion? Josh,
I motion to appoint Kimberly Horace Rodriguez to the chair of the Community Service Mini Fund.
I second.
Josh motions, have your seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 11-0 vote, that motion passes and Kimberly is appointed as the CS Mini Fund Chair. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
We are now going to move on to our round of Academic Senate appointments, starting with the Academic Senate Committee on Library and Scholarly Communications. Sorry, I don't want to pronounce your name wrong. Could you tell me how to pronounce your name?
No worries. Hi, everyone. My name is Atmi. Atmi Mehta.
Perfect. Thank you, Atmi. Whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute opening statement.
Sounds good. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Atmi Mehta. I am a incoming third-year public health major, and I am applying to be appointed to the Committee on Library and Scholarly Communications. For those of you that don't know, this committee is a part of the Academic Senate and is a highly professor and researcher facing committee that has one student representative, and we focus on issues like publication, library, the physical spaces, access to like books and things like that for professors, students, and other entities on campus. I served as the academic senator last year and was able to accomplish a lot, and I still have some aspirations I want to accomplish this year, which is why I'm reapplying. I was also a library student worker at the biomedical library, and I'm happy to bring that perspective in this role.
Thank you. We're now going to move to the 15-minute question and answer period, starting with Chris Espino.
Hey, Atmi, it's nice to see you. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to see that you're reapplying for that position. Can you talk to the council a little bit about the work you did with your passion project last year?
Definitely. Props to Chris for establishing and Sujana for establishing the concept of passion projects. And through that establishment, I was able to pursue a variety of passion projects. As I mentioned, this committee is highly professor and staff facing and does not focus on students at all, which I was surprised to learn when I first joined. But one of the things that happened last year also was the appointment of Athena Jackson as the new university librarian, or the head of the libraries, you can think of it. And one of her goals aligns with mine, which is to make UCLA Library a resource for students as well. One issue every year, the Daily Bruin students always complain there's not enough study spaces. And so I've been collaborating in my time as a student library worker at the Biomed Library, front desk, I became close with many librarians and executives like Melina or Jason Burton, who are the directors of the libraries. And so I applied and was appointed because I wanted to bring these issues to light. And in that, I've began talks with one of the directors to establish a physical space, a study space dedicated for undergrads, which is lacking. So that was one initiative I began, and another initiative that I worked on in my passion project, my main thing was creating and designing a workshop for students called Publishing for Undergraduates, outline what does it mean, look like, and how to do it. Unfortunately, my webinar wasn't able to become a reality because of the unexpected campus shutdown that occurred towards the end of the year. And so one of the goals I have this year is to execute that webinar I've got. I'm also working with the new university librarian to increase engagement on social media. If you take a look at UC Irvine or UCSD's library social media, it's much more student facing. And so that's one of the goals I've established with Athena Jackson, the new UL. So these are just some of the projects I've been working on, have accomplished, and hope to continue working on if selected.
Javier?
Yeah, hi, Anthony. Thank you so much for your initial responses and everything. I did want to ask something more related to, because your role does deal with more, I guess, or your intentions with it are intended to be a lot more student facing and I guess promoting of research and whatnot and everything, what are your intentions of making sure that underrepresented students, especially those that may make use of resources such as the academic advancement program, to ensure that they can make the most use out of, like your particular potential appointment in this role, and the services that you can provide to them?
Yeah. So definitely one of the things we want to address is like making sure that the library resources are brought to student attention for all students and especially those who come from under-resourced backgrounds. One thing that I've learned in my time is that approaching and addressing this early on into a student's experience at UCLA is crucial for their success in using those resources. So I've had discussions with several librarians and library executives to, when we have transfer student orientation, new student orientation, the Blackburn Resource Center, transfer resource center, working with these organizations, collaborating with them, and providing them like a one guide. So one thing I've been working on designing with Athena Jackson and other librarians is creating like a one-stop shop resource for everything you need to know about UCLA Library. It's extremely disappointing to see, it's like disheartening, sorry, to see that there's so many resources that go underutilized that students could really benefit from. Putting them all in one place and approaching students at their first day at UCLA is what I believe how we're going to be able to make sure that minority students and under-resourced students get the most of the library experience.
Tommy?
Hi, so I also worked on the academic senate last year as an academic senator, and as you probably already know, we do not have an actual vote. We have an advisory vote. And oftentimes many academic senate committees do not have a set aside time for student representatives to have direct input. There's no specific time for that. Our input really comes from the leadership and initiative we take to use our voices in these spaces. That being said, what steps do you plan on taking in order to learn the perspectives and needs of the UCLA student body and communicate those within your committee on the Academic Senate?
That's a really great point you mentioned. I've experienced it firsthand last year. When Virginia Steele, the previous UL University librarian, was in place, we would go to meetings and I'd have a very like minute voice in terms of, if our committee is comprised of faculty members, professors, and there's like a neurosurgeon on there and there's all sorts of other professors. They happen to have a lot of questions relating to the department. And I was able to bring my library worker perspective immediately, almost sort of butt in and just answer their question right there. And that got my foot in the door, as well as my pre-established relationship with the science librarian, who is the librarian for California representative on the board. My relationship with her allowed me to get my foot in on those conversations as well. And thanks to Athena Jackson, one of her goals for UCLA Library stands on a few pillars, and one of them is increasing student engagement. She has talked with me one-on-one about establishing, surveys for students, undergraduate students using social media, and getting the one guide to under-resourced students early on in their UCLA experience. And so I think all of these are ways that my pre-existing relationship that I've built with librarians, executives, directors, is serving me well and bringing the students to the table.
Kiara?
Hi there. Thanks so much for sharing background and answering the questions thus far. My question is a little bit similar to Tommy's, but I wanted to ask you, you talked a little bit about this in regards to the social media and the student engagement. Wanted to ask, what is your approach or thoughts on ensuring that you or in the committee is engaged in understanding students' needs throughout the year and understanding those change, as they change and develop throughout the year. Also, we're trying to reach more with our very large and expansive campus of student populations across departments, majors, and such, understanding the needs from students, across campus and just as they change, it's ensuring we're engaging with those needs, not just once, but throughout the year.
Yes, definitely. Athena Jackson, I've talked about this, one-on-one separately, as well as the although COLASC has been one thing to note is that Committee on Library and Scholarly Communications, its primary goal has been publishing and open access. And so that means like, professors publish research. There's like a lot of policies and guidelines, which is also something I worked on last year, creating like a publishing map for professors and faculty. So that although it's not one of the primary goals, I've been consistently advocating for getting students heard, because thus far the whole purpose of the committee has not been about students. It's been about which is why I don't have a vote, right? Because it has not been about students. It's been about faculty and publishing and open access. So one of the great things about being in this committee and having the pre-existing experience as a worker in the library and these relationships is that I have been able to talk about the students and bring this to attention. As a result, Athena Jackson has proved a commitment, as one of her goals and commitments is to understanding the student perspectives. And so we've discussed options like putting out email surveys every quarter about utilization of library resources, knowledge of library resources, things like that. Just want to reiterate, though, that's not the primary purpose of the committee, but it is something I am passionate about, and I hope to get implemented this upcoming year.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council members? Seeing as there are none, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute closing statement.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for your time today and your questions and consideration of my application. I want to reiterate that I have built a lasting relationship with some of the library executives, and although my role in the committee does not have a vote, and it is highly publishing and faculty and professor facing, I am deeply committed to bringing the students' voices to the table, not just the 30,000 students, but also the hundreds of library workers and the issues we face as library workers that I personally experienced. I've been able to spark discussions around these issues that are near and dear to my heart, and I hope to continue implementing my workshop, my One Guide, and bringing these library resources to students so that they may utilize these excellent things to the maximum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Can we please get ARC's recommendations?
So OPME presented an exemplary interview with ARC. ARC was particularly impressed with OPME's intimate knowledge and experience with the libraries at UCLA. We were also excited by the ideas that OPME hopes to implement in the upcoming year, as they would work towards bringing resources towards new students and increasing visibility for the existing resources the libraries provide students. With a 3-0 vote, ARC highly recommends OPME for this appointment.
Thank you, Mona. Are there any comments or concerns from council members before we vote? Chris Espino.
Hello, everyone. As you guys have all witnessed, OPME is truly incredible. I got the opportunity to interview OPME when I was the chief of Senate last year, and just instantly I knew that OPME would be committed to the role. It's unfortunate because historically we have a lot of applicants who want to add something to their resume, because it does sound quite incredible to say, hey, I'm a senator at UCLA. I mean, to employers, that's something that is impressive. But the reality is that there are two things that I personally often look for when I'm searching for a senator, and one of them is the ability for them to develop relationships with the members on that committee, right? I think this is truly an asset, and this is truly a quality that is required for people who want to serve on these committees, because if not, then not much is going to get done. It really should be about persuading people to pursue what you think is perfect for the committee. I'd also say that OTME's ideas for the committee have been really, really not only well documented, but have been taken very seriously by the committee members. So I will be abstaining since I've worked with OTME in the past, but OTME is definitely a no-brainer when it comes to this. She's the perfect person for this role.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Seeing as there are none, could you please get a motion? Javier,
I move to approve Admin Mehta to the Academic Senate Committee on Library and Scholarly Policies.
any seconds?
I second.
I second.
Javier motions, Chris Ramsey seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 12-0 to 2 vote, or 12-0 to 1 vote, sorry, that motion passes and Admi is appointed to the Academic Senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We are now going to move on to the next Academic Senate appointment with the Committee on Planning and Budget. Yep, Isra.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hey, whenever you're ready, your 1 minute opening statement.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Isra, and I'm a rising junior. I use she, her pronouns. I'm majoring in human biology and society. I'm the program I'm trying to interview for is the Committee on Planning and Budget. I served on this committee last year, and I feel like I mostly like got the skills necessary to see what a budget would look like, how to handle that, um, taking into perspective the university's budget, their spending and their allocations, and also looking at the vigorous perspective. I feel like this year I'd be able to use that insight just to further make an impact as an undergraduate.
Thank you, Isra. We're now going to move on to the 15-minute question and answer period. Are there any council members that have any questions for Isra? Chris Espino.
Hi, Isra. It's nice to see you again. Can you talk to me a little bit about what skills you picked up during your time in this committee? I do know that you joined us a little bit later in the school year to fill a vacancy. So talk to us a little bit about what you were able to achieve within those few months.
Yeah. Thank you. It's great seeing you again, Chris. So last year I feel like just like jumping in, you see like a lot of numbers. You're kind of like, okay, so the university utilizes their budget in various ways. And then you have like various faculty members and their opinions as well. I feel like the first few meetings I was just taking in, just like trying to absorb like how it goes, how to, as an undergraduate without like a vote, how to like pave my way in there and work to raise these students' voices. I feel like one skill I feel like I'm good at right now is being able to, see the numbers from a bigger perspective. I know that a lot of times the faculty members do want to, provide more resources just for graduate students. I guess it's mainly because, these graduate students do have more needs, I would say. But then at the same time, I saw that we weren't really spending a lot of time on the undergraduate side of, spending and allocations. I feel like this year, seeing that, I'd be able to, try to work with my policy analysts just to, I guess, advocate more for the undergraduate voice. I guess like, yeah, I hope that kind of answered your question.
Javier.
Yeah, hi. Just want to ask a bit more, just because I know that academic senate appointments aren't as like visible to the public eye, to the average student, as they should be and everything. So I kind of want to ask a bit more about your plans to make this specific committee or council rather a little bit more visible to the student body. Yeah, in whatever capacity you feel fit.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for your question. I feel like with this committee, I feel like it would be nice if I could like me personally go talk with like the Black Bruin Resource Center, talk with AAC just to see like what resources they would benefit from, just or even like the Transfer Student Center as well. I feel like I would have like I would want to go and speak with them, see what resources they would benefit from. And then I feel like a large role for me is just to like just put myself out there and like seek to see what these programs would need. Aside for that, I feel like AAC in itself does do a great job with outreach. I feel like I would have to work with the leaders within AAC to possibly promote wait, hold on, sorry. Yeah, I feel like working with AAC to promote this committee, see I wanted to personally like meet with uh what was it called? Sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry, my thing cut out. Yeah, so I wanted to work with AAC to possibly make like booths to see what students would benefit from. And then social media would probably be like another outlet we could use just to showcase that we're here for you, like for the students to raise awareness as well as you're gonna be spending 4 years here, might as well make the most out of it.
Nico?
Hello. Seeing as you're going to be on the committee, or you're applying for the committee on planning and budget, how do you plan to make this budget and any expenditures within the academic senate more visible and transparent to the student body?
Yeah, so I feel like to make it more transparent, probably do you mind just like expanding on what you mean like by transparent? I mean, I know like we can't really show them what numbers we have, like the numbers we're dealing with, but do you mind just like adding on to your question? Sorry.
Yeah, I actually wasn't aware that you can't show like release the numbers. Could you just elaborate on that actually?
Yeah, so like being a part of the committee, we're only like allowed to, I guess, like share the numbers within the committee as well as the academic senate leader. I feel like that kind of makes it a little bit hard to, you know, talk to undergraduates about, hey, we're spending such and such uh like money and resources on these programs. I feel like now that I think about it, I don't really think we have to, I mean, I feel like we don't really have to be talking about the specific numbers. It's just we could, within like AAC, talk about what programs would be of benefit and which ones our specific committee is funding more than other programs, if that makes sense. But yeah, just like I would have to like be more transparent about that just so I don't like, like leak the numbers that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any final questions for us out? Seeing as there are none, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you guys for taking the time to interview me. I had a lot of fun last year working with AAC and on this committee as well. It was great being able to take part in initiating a religious studies program, department. We were also able to develop research parks. And then I hope that this year I could possibly provide more funding for undergraduate research, just because I feel like as undergraduate student researchers, they don't get as much funding as they should, especially for their long hours worked. And then possibly even for like South Campus, provide more, I guess, newer technologies to use within the lecture halls. And yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Could we please get ARC's recommendations?
Yeah, so for ARC's recommendation, ISRA presented an exemplary interview with ARC. ARC was impressed with ISRA's previous experience on on this committee and concrete goals for the upcoming year. We are excited to see Isra work on her goal of helping turn the religious studies program into a department. With a 3-0 vote, ARC highly recommends Isra for this appointment.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to council deliberations. Chris Espino.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I will be abstaining because I've worked with Israel last year. I helped her get appointed, and I also worked with them as chief of Senate. I will say that Israel came onto the Senate a little bit later in the school year because we had a vacancy that needed to be filled. So Israel wasn't on the committee long enough to carry out the initiatives throughout the school year, but was very active in carrying them out as soon as they were appointed. I will say that just for the council's information, senators are binded by confidentiality. They aren't allowed to discuss topics that happen in the academic senate committees. They are only allowed to discuss those topics with other senators, the chief of Senate, the commissioner, but not even with directors within AAC. And that comes from really the fact that it's not necessarily student centered, it really is faculty centered. So I'm happy to give a presentation to the council as to how the academic senate came to be. In fact, I'll be developing that presentation so that all of you can be enlightened. But I did want to just make sure that I mentioned that so that Isra isn't chastised for that. It isn't their call, it's more of a shared governance call.
Thanks, Chris. Alicia.
I just want to say that today, like all your responses, made me feel really confident and like just like as a student here, just really like represented, and I just thought I really appreciate you wanting to get involved with this position more. And yeah, thank you. I can't wait for hopefully your appointment.
Thank you, Alicia. Could we please get a motion?
Yeah, I motion to appoint Isra as this USAC student representative to the Academic Senate Committee on Planning and Budget for the 2024-2025 academic year.
Any seconds?
I second.
Tommy motions, Kiara seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 12-0 to 1 vote, that motion passes and Isra is appointed to the Academic Senate. Thank you so much. We are now going to move on to our third Academic Senate appointment with the Academic Program Review Committee. We have Joseph.
Hi.
Hey, Joseph, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute opening statement.
Thanks. So, hi, my name is Joseph. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a psychology major with a global health minor. I'm also an incoming transfer from Mount San Jacinto College here in Temecula. Over the past year, I've been elected to serve as the student trustee for my district, and I got to represent more than 21,000 students on the board, which is kind of daunting to think back on, to be honest. But concurrently, I also got to serve on a wide range of both institution-specific and statewide committees. A relevant one that I'd love y'all to know about would be the Academic Senate's Curriculum Committee, which I'd say is the equivalent of what this is here. Some things you may not know about me from my CV. I am a first-generation college student. I am a GED graduate, and I'm also a recent immigrant. So with that, I do think that my specific intersectional perspectives are likely to be novel to the committee, and with that, I'd love to be of service to students and subsequently the institution. So thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to the 15-minute question and answer period, starting with Chris to speak.
Hello, Joseph. Thank you for being here. My question for you is, what role do you think building personal relationships with faculty plays in the persuasion process? How do you cultivate these relationships to effectively carry out your goals for the student body?
Well, like you've touched on before, like really like the most that we could do is convince others to vote how we would like to be on issues to be voted on as students. Previously, I was very close with both my academic senate president and fellow people on the board. Really, I was the first student to have an advisory vote in my district after the state had enforced it, and my only job, because it's not legally binding, was just to convince others and sometimes put public pressure. But it is really all about relationships. I tend to make friends easy, which I'm grateful for, but I am cognizant of that within my role. So
thank you. Do you have another question, Chris?
Yeah, if no one does, I'm happy to share another question. What is your understanding of the academic senate?
So like we have USAC, they have the academic senate to represent them and their interests. Specifically, I'd love to talk more about the committee if you'd like. What drew me most, to be honest, is how data oriented it is and how much there's goal planning and goal setting that they help different departments really overcome their own kerfuffles. But I think our role fits into the academic senate because it's really reassuring to know that we have overview over the quality of our education at that level as well. So though from another perspective as well to the committee, I know that most of the value that we'd be bringing in is specific to undergraduate programs, but there is a case to be made, I think, for us to be gauging conversations with department leaders on how much we are being prepared as undergrads to be competitive applicants within their pool of master's and PhD applicants as well. So I'm rambling, but I don't know if that answers your question, to be honest.
Are there any further questions? I'll ask a question. Joseph, you mentioned that you're an immigrant. Can you mention how this plays into your worldview and how you could use this knowledge that you have into your position on the academic senate?
Well, I think so I am also Lebanese, but I grew up in Syria most of my life, and I think something that is really the shining star of the U.S. educational system in California would be academic freedom. Sadly, as you all are aware, this I would say we've taken this kind of for granted with the recent regents' decisions and conversations that are happening in the legislature. I hope that we would still be having our eyes on the prize in that regard. So really, I think if I had to boil it down to an academia perspective, I guess growing up in the Middle East made me realize why it's really important to have academic freedom. So yeah, I'll say that.
Chris, another question?
This will be my last question for you, don't worry. Is how do you navigate a disagreement with someone while maintaining their engagement and attention?
Well, I think being kind and respectful kind of go without saying, but I can give you an example if you'd like. One of the most heated debates that I'd been on as a board member, where at the time we were revising our mission statement as an institution, and we have historically been a Hispanic serving institution. We received special funding for that designation, but a certain board member felt that that made an in-group within students that was unfair to the rest, despite how much they had been reassured that that was really not the case, that students of all backgrounds, of all racial and ethnic upbringings really and identities were on board with this, of us recognizing who makes up our community and who is of service to us and makes us up as a MSJC community. Anyways, long story long, I'm the most progressive on a board of a conservative supermajority, so I did get, however, a majority to vote with me on that because I kept an open mind and I listened as well. But regardless of how I may personally think the arguments are egregious and lacking of intellect, frankly. So, yeah.
Javier?
Sorry, sorry, my audio cut out real quick, but Joseph, just want to ask, especially because you have that prior experience being a trustee for your CC district and everything, I kind of want to ask like how that experience would help translate over to your potential appointment here in the academic senate as a senator. Yeah.
Well, I think what my biggest takeaway has been it's I I can really put myself in a lot of faculty and administrators' shoes now, which helps me kind of like tear down their points as they come up because I kind of know how they think, and I tend to plan for that in advance. But um, I'd love to talk to you more about being a trustee. That is nerve-wracking, kind of not something I'd recommend for most people. And I don't know if I'd do it again, to be honest. So what I love about this is that I get to do a lot of the work without the politics and the public pressure, if you will. And it's a lot easier to stay true to myself without compromising on what I think are our shared values. So, yeah.
Thank you. Are there any final questions before we move on to closing statements? Seeing as there are none, Joseph, whenever you're ready, please, your 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you. So I am aware that my term would be 1 year, which plays in really a snippet into the 9-year review cycle. But I do think there's value that we have in having a fresh pair of eyes at different stages of the review. But on a different note, I do think it's important for us, like I've said, to have that oversight on departments. So it's worth mentioning that I won't solely be investing my time as the role would dictate, but as a wannabe faculty member, I promise you, I won't squander the collective student voice by my lack of preparedness or willpower. So with that, thank you for considering me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Can we please get ARC's recommendations now?
Yes, of course. Joseph presented a strong application and interview with ARC. ARC appreciated his deep background in advocating for non-traditional students who have been historically underrepresented in higher education. As a previous student trustee, he demonstrates a commitment to ensuring proper oversight and transparency in his role in the academic senate. We were excited about Joseph's passion in enhancing the undergraduate experience by preparing students to be better applicants for graduate school. With a 2-0 to 1 vote, ARC highly recommends Joseph for the appointment of Academic Senate Academic Program Review Committee.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from council members? Bruno?
So I abstained in the ARC interview and I'll be abstaining today because Joseph is a director in my office. But I will say that from the moment I read his application for my office and from the times I've interviewed him, both for my office and in the ARC interview, and in the times I've gotten to know Joseph in our like meetings in the TSR office, I've gotten a chance to see just how passionate Joseph really is and how much that is displayed in all of the interactions we've had so far. And I would really recommend Joseph for this position. And if I didn't know him, I would be voting yes. So I would really recommend voting yes on Joseph.
Thank you, Mono. Chris?
I don't previously know Joseph. Joseph has not served in the academic senate, which is the rationale behind many questions. I will say that based on this interview, I am confident that Joseph is capable of not only doing a good job, but I'd say more of a phenomenal job in the academic senate. So I will be personally voting yes, and I encourage other council members to also vote yes. And I look forward to, if appointed, working with you, Joseph.
Thank you. Are there any final comments? If not, could we please get a motion? Motion, please. Yes, Tamim.
Motion to appoint Joseph Awad for the position of Academic Program Review Committee in the Academic Senate for the year 2024-2025.
I second.
Temi motions have your seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 12-0 to 1 vote, that motion passes and Joseph is appointed to the Academic Senate. Congrats. We're now going to move on to the next appointment with Dante Ray.
I apologize. I don't think this person is here. I did email them right after the meeting started, but it doesn't look like they're here.
No problem. We're now going to move on to Avery with the Student Health Advisory Committee.
Hello.
Hey, Avery.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute opening.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to interview with all of you today. To introduce myself, my name is Avery, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising third year majoring in microbiology, immunology, and molecular genetics with a minor in global health, and I'm excited to apply for a position on the Student Health Advisory Committee. My motivation for applying for SHAC lies within the leadership experiences that I have had at UCLA, particularly as Student Health Network Director for the Student Wellness Commission, alongside other leadership experiences in other student-led organizations. These experiences have given me a deep understanding of the diverse health and wellness issues affecting our students, especially those from marginalized populations. With this in mind, as a member of SHAC, I aim to enhance transparency and communication among the student body about our health initiatives, strengthen our connections between SWC and other USAC entities, and collaborate with various student-led organizations with the goal of ensuring that health services provided on campus are diverse, equitable, and accessible to any and all students. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Avery. We're now going to move on to the 15-minute Q&A period. Does anyone have any questions? Javier.
Hello. I just want to quickly ask, if you could please expand on some of the initiatives that you intend to maybe push for, if you were to be appointed on SHAC specifically for uplifting and promoting the health and wellness of marginalized students in our UCLA community.
For sure, yeah. I'm going to say, first of all, that I cannot speak for every single marginalized student on campus, including transfer and international students, since I am not one. But one thing that I would really make a priority in my role, especially since I am not part of those communities, would be being able to prioritize the voices of marginalized and non-traditional communities in my role, whether it be by connecting SHAC to various USAC offices that work with these students, or connecting to student-led organizations that work with these communities of students. It is really vital for me as a member of SHAC that is going into this kind of role in a very new light to be able to educate myself on the health and wellness issues that these students face, so that way I can be able to use this as data and feedback to drive solutions that SHAC can utilize in order to support the well-being of all marginalized students on campus. That being said, some initiatives that I have thought of in preparation for this were inclusive health service reviews, conducting regular reviews of campus health services to ensure they are inclusive and meet the needs of our diverse populations, especially LGBTQ+ students, students with dependents, transfer students, international students, and more. Through this, I hope to identify gaps in services and implement changes to ensure all students receive appropriate and respectful care. And I would also love for this to be an opportunity for the implementation of therapy circles for transfer and international students if these don't already exist within CAPS. I would also love to start conducting health equity workshops and training alongside the ASH Center. As a committee, we have a very unique opportunity to work with ASH to organize workshops and training sessions on topics such as health equity, cultural competence, and implicit bias for students and faculty alike. And these presentations can then be given to USAC staffers and students across various on-campus organizations. In this way, we can help in educating students and utilizing health education to foster an inclusive and understanding campus health environment, where all students feel feel validated and can receive equitable care. This training can also be administered to ASH and CAP staff to ensure that clinical staff are also aware of the issues and concerns marginalized students face in healthcare environments. I would also like to streamline our appointment systems as well, because it would be easier for students to make appointments at ASH and CAPS, as well as provide more transparency regarding payments for these services. In the past, many students have raised concerns about being able to access appointments with ASH and finding out they would only be able to see a primary care doctor weeks later. And they've also raised concerns on the high amounts of money that they would need to spend without any of their knowledge. Hence, I hope to work with ASH to make it easier for students to get early appointments along with CAPS, while also ensuring that they are aware of the payments that they will need for the health services that they need depending on their insurance and UC SHIP. If we can also work with them to lower the cost overall of health services as well, that would be an added bonus in making health more accessible at UCLA. Finally, I would love to work with student-led health organizations to offer free wellness screenings and vaccination drives. I'd love to utilize ASH staff to offer free screenings for common health issues such as blood pressure, cholesterol, and glucose levels. We could also use these resources to hold vaccination drives for the flu, COVID-19, HPV, and other preventable diseases. In this way, we can help in ensuring that students stay up to date with important screenings and vaccinations, and further ensure that they have accessible ways to maintain their health on campus. By advocating for and implementing these initiatives, I hope that SHAC can significantly enhance the quality, accessibility, and effectiveness of health services at ASH and CAPS, ultimately contributing to a healthier and more supportive campus environment. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Avery, for the long response. Kiara?
Yes, thank you for everything you've shared thus far. I want to ask you, so one part of SHAC is, of course, advising ASH on student health insurance, UC SHIP. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your approach or thoughts on expanding? I know you talked a little bit about education on campus, and so increasing health literacy of student health insurance, also particular to the various diverse populations on campus to ensure that students are able to navigate it, as well as just accessing students being able to access different forms of healthcare, such as populations of undocumented or various other populations of students who may need to access alternative routes.
For sure, yeah. When it comes to undocumented students and many other populations of students, I know that there are legalities there that I may not understand as deeply as I should. But when it comes to that, there are things that I will be sure to educate myself and ensure that my fellow SHAC committee members educate themselves on, as this is an important part in making sure that we, as people that are liaisons with ASH and CAPS, are able to relegate to them and make sure that they are able to cater to this appropriately. When it comes to accessibility is definitely something that's very, very important, especially since this is something that is going to be championed within the SWC a lot more this year. And that is something that I also do want to take into account when it comes to being able to cater to the wide and diverse populations of students that we have on campus. So being able to ensure that any updates and initiatives that we publish are written in accessible language, for example, in multiple languages for international students whose English may not be their first language, or being able to write it in accessible language so that those that are hard of sight or those that cannot see as well are still able to read them, is something that I would try to prioritize and SHAC as well and communicate to the ASH Communications Committee, which is responsible for more of the realm of accessibility issues, especially when it comes to pamphlets regarding insurance. I would also be sure to be in constant contact with people from ASH and CAPS to ensure that all of us have a direct understanding of insurance, how it affects populations such as out-of-state students, transfer students, and international students, so that we can relay these to these populations and ensure that we are working with student-led organizations that these communities cater to ensure that students are well informed and able to access these resources accordingly. And if anyone ever has any questions, they can be open to come to us. One other idea that I had was being able to hold open meetings where if students had any questions about the resources that they want to access on campus, they could come directly and ask those questions to us and we could relay those to the necessary officials. And that is something that I would also prioritize in my role as well. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Avery. Are there any further questions? Seeing as there are none, Avery, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1 minute closing statement.
Yes, so first off, thank you for your time today and for considering me for this position. The Student Wellness Commission and student health and wellness are deeply important to me, and I'm honored to be involved in these initiatives on campus. As a member of the SWC, I understand the critical need to address issues and disparities in the healthcare provided to our students. If selected for this position, I am committed towards guiding SHAC towards greater transparency and active engagement. My goal is to help shape a more inclusive and diverse healthcare environment for all students, with a particular focus on non-traditional and underrepresented students and marginalized communities. I believe that with my initiatives and leadership, we can enhance administrative oversight and improve health services across campus entities.
Thank you. Could we please get ARC's recommendations now?
Yes, of course. Avery presented an exceptional application and interview with ARC. We appreciated her deep interest in engaging with underrepresented student communities and mother organizations, improving transparency within the entire student body, and eagerness to receive feedback and community input for this position, and her passion to expand services for LGBTQIA students. Her knowledge on UC SHIP and ASH Center services provided Avery with the qualifications for the ideal applicant. With a 2-0-1 vote, ARC highly recommends Avery for the appointment of the Student Health Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Diego. Do any council members have any comments or concerns? Kiara?
Everyone, so first I just wanted to say that I will be abstaining from this vote. I do know Avery personally as well as professionally, as she was in the SWC this past year and will be in my office again this year. And I also just want to highlight her exemplary work ethic and passion for student health and well-being on campus across various communities, and the heart that she puts in everything she does. I have just so enjoyed working with her, and I know that she is very passionate and dedicated to making sure that the space that she is in is one that is inclusive of ideas and students' perspectives and students' needs, and will be engaged and will be invested in engaging with students throughout the year and across campus to make sure that the work that SHAC does is effective this upcoming year.
Thanks, Kiara. Javier?
Yeah, I would just also like to briefly comment that I would also be abstaining from this vote just because I do also know Avery in a personal light as well. Like that's but like she's really demonstrated herself as an amazing potential representative for SHAC. Clearly with how well versed their answers were regarding healthcare and especially the intersectionality, even with identities that she is not a part of. So I am very, very happy to recommend her y'all for a yes vote on this, but I will be abstaining personally.
Bueno?
Same as the other two people who've spoken so far, I will also be abstaining in this vote. I also abstain in the ARC interview vote. I know Avery in a personal capacity, and while I am abstaining, like the previous individuals before me have stated, I really highly recommend Avery for this position, and I hope that everyone votes yes. While I don't know Avery in like the healthcare and like wellness side of things, I feel like the qualities that she presents in this area also extend to the other areas of their life and have been clear to me in a personal capacity. And so I'm really excited to see what they would do on SHAC if they are appointed.
Thank you. Tommy?
I would just also like to say that I will be abstaining from this vote, as I know Avery in a personal and professional capacity as well. I'm so excited to have her on board my executive staff this year. However, I would just like to say that Avery is an amazing candidate for this role. She is extremely intelligent, passionate, and driven about the work she does. Her commitment to progress, access, equity, and justice is nothing short of inspiring. She truly puts her heart into all spaces she advocates in, and I can't wait to see what she accomplishes if appointed to this role.
Tamim?
Yeah, I won't be abstaining from the vote, but I did meet Avery last year when we were campaigning, and she's super awesome. And I just want to emphasize that I was thoroughly impressed by the responses, especially by their knowledge and their focus on marginalized communities and increasing accessibility of resources for all communities.
Diego?
I will be voting, and I just want to highlight how incredible Avery's ARC interview went. Both Josh and I were just blown away at her responses and their passion to continue learning in this space, even when they may not have had an answer, just willing to learn be engaged with student communities, mother organizations, and honestly be willing to accept community feedback. That was just so incredible. So we're super excited to see you in this position if we move you forward.
Thanks, Diego. Could we please get a motion? Kiara?
I motion to approve Avery Royce for the position on the Student Health Advisory Committee for the 24 to 25 academic year.
I second.
Kiara motions, Diego seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With a 9-0 to 4 vote, Avery is officially appointed to the Student Health Advisory Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your lovely comments. I hope you all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Avery. We're now going to move on to our final appointment of the day with Sophia Wang, the Academic Senate Executive Board. Hey, Sophia, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your 1-minute opening.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to interview me tonight. My name is Sophia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm applying to be on the executive board of the Academic Senate. I'm a rising third-year public affairs major and stats minor. I started my USAC journey as an AAC intern, actually with Tommy, and became an eventual staffer in the Access and Equity Office. Last spring, I helped campaign for the Universal Transit Pass, which then jump-started me into the Facilities Commission as a project lead. So I believe that my range of experiences in the USAC sphere would translate perfectly to the duties of the Academic Senate, as I understand the dynamics of how student government impacts the daily lives of the UCLA student body. I have also done student research throughout campus, so I've interacted with various faculty and understand their role as stakeholders within the university. So I believe that I can adequately participate in the Academic Senate while understanding that it is a faculty-leaning institution. I truly do want to give back to the UCLA community. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to the 15-minute Q&A period, starting with Chris Espino.
Sure. Thank you for being here. My question is, how would you balance presenting data and emotional appeals when trying to persuade faculty members?
Okay, I think I would try to emphasize the importance of the student body's lived experience when presenting to the Academic Senate and these faculty, because I really truly believe that they, at the end of the day, forget how young we are and how we're still trying to make our way into the world. So I do believe that this kind of pathos is really important to emphasize when speaking to these faculty, while also balancing the data of the students' demographics and their majors and their academic breadth and the diversity that they bring to the table. So just striking that balance would be a crucial component of me as a part of the Academic Senate.
Javier?
Yeah, so I just want to ask, what is one key, I guess, difficulty that you foresee in a potential tenure as part of the Academic Senate Executive Board, especially being a student in a faculty-led space?
Yeah, I believe that a potential challenge would be faculty not prioritizing student voices within the Academic Senate as we are outnumbered. And a way that I would attempt to tackle that is by emphasizing the student engagement that is required by the Academic Senate in order for them to remain in touch with the pulse of the student body during times of crisis. So just making sure that the Academic Senate remains accessible by all undergraduates. I know that the Senate chair holds monthly office hours, and I believe expanding outreach to various student organizations would be very effective in getting her to listen to feedback directly from student voices.
Chris Espino?
Okay, perfect. My second question for you is, how do you navigate a disagreement with someone while maintaining their engagement and attention?
So I believe that navigating a disagreement requires a very sensitive awareness of everyone's stake within the situation. And in order to like navigate these rocky waters, I believe that we need to continue emphasizing the act of listening to each other and being aware of the unique positions that we all may be coming to the table with. And then while emphasizing the importance of maintaining the shared goal in mind, I believe that just bringing up in conversations how we're doing this for the greater good of the UCLA student body is important, and understanding how we all have a duty to represent our students fairly.
You have another question, Chris?
Thank you for that response. My last question for you is, what is your understanding of the Academic Senate?
Yeah, so the Academic Senate has a very comprehensive website on that is accessible by all, which I've done my research in, and my understanding is that it is a organization composed of almost like 3,000 faculty members, which is something that I believe most of the student body isn't aware of. And it's also comprised of various committees that oversee things such as like grievance charges, bringing reports, submitting reports to the table, as well as submitting nominations for DEI awards and just overseeing degree programs. So I believe the Academic Senate sphere is very large and encompasses many crucial, pertinent issues.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Sophia? Seeing as there are none, we're now going to move on to your 1-minute closing statement whenever you're ready.
Okay. I believe that my diverse experience within USAC thus far has prepared me for being a part of the Academic Senate. Helping oversee this organization of faculty and students would truly be such a full circle moment for me, and as well as an avenue for me to give back to UCLA. I hope to expand the transparency and equity of the Academic Senate by highlighting the processes of legislation and engaging the student body by establishing a network with existing student orgs on campus and consulting with them on a frequent basis. Most students are unaware of the role that the Academic Senate plays, and I really believe that highlighting the services that the Senate provides will be a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Could we please get Park's recommendations?
Yes, sorry, 1 second. Sophia demonstrated that she was an excellent candidate during her interview with ARC, receiving a 3-0 vote. ARC was impressed with Sophia's well-rounded experience, having been part of AAC, FAC, and the Burns for Better Transit campaign. ARC is very excited to see what Sophia will do in her position, with a strong desire to bring student voices to the table and ensuring students are adequately represented to the Academic Senate.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from council members? Chris Espino?
Again, Sophia did not serve as a senator last year, but I was familiar with Sophia's work in the other spaces within the office of AAC. I will personally be voting for Sophia. Very eloquent, very passionate, did your research. All of that stuff are definitely compelling factors to have you on the Academic Senate. I encourage all of the other council members to do the same.
Tommy?
I'm just saying that I will have to unfortunately abstain from this vote as well, as she is one of my close friends, and I've also had the privilege to work with her in the Academic Affairs Commission. I also just want to say that through working with her and as her friend, she's one of the most driven, compassionate, and hardworking people I know. In knowing her, she's truly a leader who understands what it means to not only advocate for students, but with students, and I can't wait to see what she accomplishes if appointed to this role.
Thank you. Kiernan?
Hi, Sophia. Hi, everyone. I'm also unfortunately gonna have to abstain because I'm also very close with Sophia and also worked with her in a professional sense as well. Sophia is truly one of the most driven, passionate, compassionate, and hardworking people I know, and I cannot recommend her enough and to recommend all of you to vote yes because she truly is such a great person, a great friend, and a great leader. So I'm really excited to see what she'll do in the role.
Thank you. With that, can we please get a motion to appoint Sophia?
Yeah, I motion to appoint Sophia Wang to the Academic Senate Executive Board as a USAC student representative for the 2024-2025 academic year.
I second that
I
motion.
second.
Tommy motions, Chris Espino seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With an 11-0 to 2 vote, that motion passes and Sophia is officially appointed to the Academic Senate Executive Board.
Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
With that, we are done with appointments for today, unless Josh, did you find our final appointment? Or is Dante not here?
I don't see them. I do see we have one attendee in chat. I turned on an option so you can message panelists. If you are Dante, can you please message me? But it doesn't look like they're here.
Okay, we'll just move on then. Next we have Javier with a special presentation on the 2024 UCSA campaign.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hopefully y'all are still like awake or have some capacity to be listening after that long round of appointments. But I'm gonna go ahead and start. Oh, I cannot share my screen. Josh, if you want to give me that permission, or if you want to share the slides yourself, that would be amazing.
Okay, you should be able to share now.
Sweet. Okay. Lovely. Okay. Great. I think y'all can see it. Just trying to expand my window. Let me do that, please. Okay. All right. So hi everyone. Welcome to a very quick little presentation I'm going to make for the UCSA 2024 campaigns. Thank you to some of the council members who were part of the 30 some people delegation that UCLA was able to take to the annual student organizing summit this past year, or actually this past weekend, excuse me, where we were able to engage in a lot of like really fruitful discussions with folks from other UC campuses regarding student advocacy in a variety of realms, from basic needs access to college affordability, as well as, environmental justice and indigeneity land bank initiatives. So without further ado, I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as possible. But there are also speaker notes in the on the slides as well that I will be referring to. So just to recap, these are annual campaigns that UCSA runs on an annual basis. Specifically, ranging from things like Acquire, which focuses on the connection between academic success, depending on the availability of holistic resources and protections as they relate to health. Fund the UC focuses on ensuring the affordability, quality, and access to the UC and higher education at large. Racial Justice Now focuses on, sorry. Okay. Racial Justice Now focuses on elevating students from historically marginalized communities to encourage graduation with their personhood intact while also combating the school to prison pipeline. Students Enacting Environmental Defense, or SEED, focuses on pursuing environmental justice initiatives at the UC and the surrounding communities, with a particular focus on preserving indigeneity. As last but not least, UC We Vote focuses on increasing the legislative power of UC students through organizing nonpartisan student voter registration, education, and turnout efforts at the UC. So these are initiatives that we vote for every year at the Student Organizing Summit through a collaborative and democratic process. And we try to figure out ways that we can effectively mobilize towards bodies like the UC Regents, Office of the President, and the various levels of government as needed. Oh, are you gonna go? Okay. First off is Acquire. So Acquire, the basic needs and wellness one, goal for this year is to advocate for increased funding for basic needs centers to create food security programs targeted at undocumented and international students. So just some more added context that you could see on the left-hand side of the screen, CalFresh and other government assistance programs that aid in basic needs access are not as accessible to these student populations, if at all. We particularly want to also focus on advocating for transfer and reentry students, as well as non-traditional students at large that lack access to these programs that are statistically more likely to be affected by food and housing insecurity due to multiple lived identities. As well as this campaign goal would also entail gathering funding data from the Basic Needs Village. So definitely continuing the fight to hold the Community Programs Office accountable in their financial transparency to the student body regarding how they use their student fees, as well as pushing, I just mentioned that, acquiring funding for greater support through a combination of Regento and UCOP advocacy by students and UCSA. Next up, we have Fund the UC, whose goal this year is to secure a $2 million endowment fund UC-wide with the goal of supporting the 12 to 50% of non-traditional students, including but not limited to. This would be more so, related to foster youth for the most part, but it also deals with tackling the formerly incarcerated and reentry students as they pertain to the UC student population. And just some quick, statistics and demographics. By age 26, only 4% of foster youth would have received their bachelor's. And this campaign's goal would advocate for this endowment fund by channeling funding from the alumni, state representatives that help back foster youth programs, as well as non-traditional students at large, as well as figuring out routes of support due to the fact that both the state of California as well as the UC system are facing major budget deficits going into the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. That may result in significant pushback regarding proper support and actually being able to fulfill this campaign goal. But there's also a need to figure out the potential limitations of this goal, as certain student groups that are labeled as non-traditional, as mentioned, for foster youth, for example, already have some form of infrastructure set in place to have close to a debt-free college education. So this would involve, more collaboration with the Bruin Guardian Scholars Program in the Bruin Resource Center that we as an EVP office are already taking up through our access and retention team. Okay, moving on. The Racial Justice Now campaign goal is to pass Proposition 6, which will eliminate involuntary servitude, and vote no on Proposition 36, which will allow for felony charges and increase sentences for certain drug and theft crimes. So the precedent for this is slavery is still legal through a loophole of 13th Amendment re-involuntary servitude for the incarcerated. In an age of harsher criminalization of homelessness here in the United States following the 2024 SCOTUS decision that Gen Rep 1 Gago was able to, successfully pass and write a resolution on, just earlier this summer, as well as Governor Newsom's executive order that calls for the sweeping of homeless encampments that passed earlier this month, actually. Most UCs, including UCLA, have some form of a severe housing crisis with little in place to construct more affordable housing for students. In order to support some of our most marginalized, there have been numerous reports of students even here at UCLA having to live out of their cars because they can't afford Westwood prices. And so we really want to, advocate for Proposition 6, not only from a racial justice standpoint, supporting especially our Black student and Black community members as well, but also just advocating for students at large that could be, homeless at any second now. It also wants to combat the mass criminalization and prison industrial complex, which not would, but already does disproportionately affect Black Indigenous communities of color. Okay. Moving on to Students Enacting Environmental Defense, or SEED. This campaign goal is known as CLEAR, which stands for Compliance, Learning, Equity, Accountability, and Reconnection. So this would just essentially make sure that the University of California follows the NAGPRA compliance and ensures that NAGPRA officers at each campus are held accountable in their duty to their Indigenous tribes that they occupy. So in regards to NAGPRA, NAGPRA is the Native American Grave Protection and Restoration Act. So the UC does not care about respecting treaties with Native tribes. Certain campuses like UC Santa Barbara are responsible for holding Native remains on their campuses, much to the dismay of local tribes and Indigenous students at large. I've included some resources, specifically from UCSB, to sort of cite the concerns there. But our SEED campaign goal last year featured their vice chair, Asukar, who is also a UCSB student and spoke very much on this as well. So I can also bring them in at some point if we need a little bit more information regarding the UC's very inhumane practices towards Native people. And the UC also holds stakes in the construction of the 30-meter telescope by the TMT company in Mauna Kea, Hawaii, as well. So it's very much citing the fact that, SEED as a campaign is very much linked to environmental justice because environmental justice is Indigenous justice as well. This is also an initiative that we help to back alongside some of our Native students here at the UC. Yeah. And a little bit more, explanation on what NAGPRA is. Again, NAGPRA stands for the Native American Great Protection and Repatriation Act. I misspoke about it earlier, my apologies. But essentially, it's a federal law to ensure that the remnants of natives and their artifacts are returned to their original tribes. And we're not just talking about like historical artifacts, we're talking about like literal human remains that the UC is keeping. There's data on this. And the UC are some campuses are just simply refusing to return those like remains, literal human remains, mind you, to the respective tribes. And much of our indigenous related advocacy, such as our C campaign goal last year, which is to establish like successful and permanent like shared spaces or green spaces for our native communities at the UC campuses, fell short due to a lack of trust as the UC does not comply with NAGPRA. So this is going to be a huge and major goal that we hopefully can get very far in with UCLA specifically to better improve our advocacy with the indigenous population here. Okay, and last but not least, UC We Vote has the campaign goal of securing accessible voting ballot boxes, at least 6 per campus, in preparation for future elections, increasing polling stations, and establish voting centers with more language accessibility and volunteer support for students. 2 things for this. One, in terms of the amount of ballot boxes, I know certain UC campuses already have like more than 6 ballot boxes per campus, but really we're just trying to make the amount that are available on campus for any given like election cycle proportional with the amount of students that are there, as well as making use of the space that we have at the UC, making sure that they're like actually accessible and not like all the way at the Hammer Museum like UCLA is. And then for the language accessibility aspect, that's for like basically breaking down like the legal language of some of the, for example, state propositions that we have. Because like if you guys remember last year's state elections, Proposition 1, which was aimed at like as a mental health like overhaul in a sense. I'm like forgetting the word right now, but the legal language like allowed for it to pass, and in reality, it's like actually a very cruel and like terrible proposition that shouldn't have passed to begin with. So that's kind of like the ultimate end goal of UC Weevil. And so I'm going to be trying to work as hard as possible with our Bruins Vote Coalition here, as well as our civic engagement team within EVP to also, push for these initiatives. In terms of what's next, we're currently looking for campaign vice chairs. So if you or anyone that you know here at UCLA or any other UC campus is interested in potentially leading some of these amazing campaigns, nominations do close by September 7th. And if you are interested, please feel free to reach out to either myself or through the EVP Instagram at evp.ucla. If you have any questions or if you want to set up a meeting at any time to sort of go over what the responsibilities are. But I can guarantee, especially like having worked with so many of the vice chairs last year in my capacity as a UC relations staff, it's a very like fulfilling and rewarding role. You get so much opportunities to work with amazing student leaders from across the UC, as well as they'll get significant amounts of support from UCSA itself. So you get support from not only just like the EVPs like myself, but also like a dedicated campaigns chair and even the UCSA president and professional staff that help advise you in terms of like how you can successfully roll out the your campaigns at each campus. There's also the current task of researching and laying out specific action items for the fall that are also going through, as well as training our campus coordinators and beginning to connect them with their cross-campus counterparts. But, ultimately, if you do want to get involved in whatever capacity, whether it be like even running for a campaign chair role or a vice chair role, or just wanting to like help us out, like fulfill any one of these like 5 initiatives, like please reach out to me. I would be more than happy to set up some points of collaboration or even a meeting with y'all to sort of discuss what more USAC or your respective offices can do to better support our various campaign goals. But for now, just want to open the floor up to any questions if needed. If not, then thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our presentation.
Any questions for Javier?
Okay, period. Oh, Josh.
I actually don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you so much for giving us that presentation. Also, thank you so much for coordinating SOS. Me, my AIVP, and my Campus Safety Alliance Vice Chair, we all went and we all thought it was very well run and very well organized. So I just wanted to say props to EVP on that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. If you guys want to look at some of the experiences that we had, make sure to look at the IVP and the TSR Instagram for some of the TikToks that they made. Shout out to the Olympic Village for the inspiration.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Javier.
Of course.
And I highly encourage everyone to go to the IVP Instagram. There's a great TikTok on there. Okay, we're now gonna move on to officer reports. Let's try and keep it really short. I'm gonna run through mine really quickly. Drafted my 2 bylaw changes, finalized OSAC allocations. Thank you so much to Jonathan, Jessica, and Alex. Meeting with my directors for the first time next week. I had a meeting with President Drake last week. Usual meetings with AVC Rick Bazil and AVC DeLuca. And then Javier and I have a meeting with Interim Chancellor Hunt on Thursday that we're preparing for. Our usual student leaders check-ins with Seppi and Mick DeLuca. I'm meeting with Bounce tomorrow to discuss a potential partnership. Met with Pamela along with Javier and Josh, and I went through a lot of appointment applications. Josh, whenever you're ready.
Sounds good. These past 2 weeks, ARC conducted 18 interviews. Thank you so much, Mona and Diego, for all your help. I know that was quite a lot. Tonight we had 11 appointments, and I also worked with FICOM chair on getting their appointment process started. CRC also met, and we approved 3 bylaw changes that are going to be presented today. Thank you all for sending it on to the STC for all letter. I sent that to the Metro Board of Directors, and it was confirmed to be received. And then, like I said earlier, I attended SOS. Thank you again, Javi and EVP, for coordinating. My office had our second all-staff meeting. Our directors presented their business plan for the upcoming school year and what they want to work on and their initiatives. I've been working a lot with my Campus Safety Alliance vice chair. We're working on finalizing our community agreements and town hall guidelines, and I'll probably reach out to all the council members involved later this week to set up a meeting to finalize those guidelines. And then we're also working on reaching out to GSA, the LGBTQ Resource Center, and on-campus housing council to become involved on the alliance as voting members. And then my transparency team is working on continuing to post the USAC meeting notes. Yes, we'll continue I'm so sorry. 1 second. Sorry, we're going to continue doing that bi-weekly, and then during the school year, we'll do it every week. And then my AIVP, Megan, is working on making a contact sheet with all the USAC appointments and updating our administration contact guide. And then I'm also working with my office to develop a student workers' rights guide. We're going to be collaborating with Student Legal Services and ACCLA HR on this to develop an ACCLA policy section. And then in terms of action items, I'm meeting with Diego as well as the HSI student liaisons to discuss how USAC can support HSI initiatives in the coming academic year. And then I'm also going to be meeting with Mona and my student relations team to plan a workshop on starting a new student organization for transfer students.
Thank you, Josh. Javier.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm also going to try speeding through these. So in terms of opportunities, send people over to apply for campaign vice chair. The elections are really chill. I'll nominate you. Cool. You guys have my information on the officer report. In terms of reports, we have continued our meetings with ABC Brazil of campus safety, regarding campus safety and like know your rights and stuff like that. Specifically, we requested updates from Brazil's office regarding operations for the fall. Working through the recommendation, and he reported that he was working through the recommendations from the 21 CP Solutions Group, as well as UC Office of the President, trying to align with the state and federal emergency response services in preparation for the 2028 Olympic Games. But also basically like training based on like worst case scenario approaches to campus safety, whatever that means. Assistant Vice Chancellor of Campus Life, Mick DeLuca, was also working internally with Campus Life on some guidelines on what is permissible for student protesters, as well as developing a non-discrimination policy of sorts to help sort of, I guess, protect students. Shocker. Looping in other USAC offices and committees into meetings for developing a campus safety plan with real student input. I did plug the Campus Safety Alliance. So I am trying to get y'all sort of like in the loop with that as well as clarifying the process for non-affiliates to host events on campus in preparation for fall quarter and the height of presidential elections. Basically just looking back at like some of the very questionable events that happened during the first encampment in Royce Hall. And then next, we're moving on to our continued meeting with administration. We're more so just talking about like the potential for scrutiny against people wearing masks and participating in protests, especially now more than ever. Like considering that Nassau County in New York like actually passed a mask ban on bipartisan lines. So I'm really just trying to like push for very much like getting like certain members of administration, notably Seppi, who is the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Student Health and Development, to meet with the Disabled Student Union to sort of like discuss more about like the implications of what a mask ban can be, or like leaving that up to the police, because the police are already, you know, so great at doing their jobs, and it definitely won't be used to disproportionately discriminate against like Black, Indigenous students of color. Surely not. But moving on from that, directors have been onboarded and team meetings have began. Specifically, I'm working a lot more with the Access and Retention team to closely develop a like communication outreach plan for the fall. Going to try reconnecting or like resending like my letter to the campus retention committee, just because I know that they're like currently in like the transitions of leadership, and some of their like access roles are like not even filled yet. So I'm going to try like connecting more to channels that I do have open, as well as working with the civic engagement team and Philip Goodrich from Bruins Vote to shift to like education and like a stronger in-person presence to both encourage like, you know, voter registration, especially, you know, coming into the local and state elections that are coming up. But as well as, you know, sort of educating the student body on the history of like, voter disenfranchisement, why it's important to vote, or like why certain communities, you know, maybe have less access to voter literacy materials, and what that sort of like implies in regards to like what the UC needs to do to ensure like equitable access to civic engagement as a whole. And then last but not least, I'm working with the developing our Lobby Corps curriculum as well. So if you or anyone you know is interested in getting more into more formal forms of advocacy at the local, state, and federal levels, then definitely look out for that. Okay, moving on, I participate in voting for the Student Observer to the regions for some of the following committees. I'm not going to name them all, but some of them are like Academic and Student Affairs, the Health Services Committee, and Public Engagement and Development. So we should be getting results from those very soon. And we're also preparing for the August 14th Regents Health Services Committee here at UCLA. I linked the agenda down there, but we're going to try figuring out more internally, like what types of student priorities we want to see, and sort of discuss with the Health Services Committee while they're here. Okay, then this is the part that you've all been waiting for. We've mobilized over 30 UCLA students to the UCSA Student Organizing Summit this past weekend, where we participated in the selection of the 2024 UCSA campaign goals and began talking with different basic needs and undocumented policy, undocumented human like policy resource centers regarding alongside Jen Rep. Ron Diego, hoping to meet with State Senator Durazo regarding the letter, to sort of discuss more like how EVP and, you know, USAC as a whole can be a little bit more, you know, of undocumented allies this next quarter. Sorry, I'm like blanking, y'all. I'm tired. I'm hungry. But I was also managed to help get a UCSA sound-on letter to the UCOP textbook affordability initiative with the Academic Affairs Commission. Shout out to Katie for bringing that up, and we were able to get successfully sent on by UCSA. And then I'm also participating in a student outreach initiative for a potential new director at the LGBTQ Campus Resource Center in my capacity as a staff there. So that's also been a really good and informative experience in terms of like what types of new roles of support that we can expect for this next year with the student body. And then, you know, just outlining some meetings I have lined up and everything. Adam mentioned we have a meeting with Chancellor Hunt on Thursday to sort of discuss admin relations with USAC and moving into the fall. Kind of going to revise like our Bruin advocacy grant guidelines, meeting with certain elected representatives to discuss like more like collaborations that we can do in the fall, or like certain discussions that need to be had. Meeting with, you know, AVC CEPI regarding disabled students and the right to mask, as well as a meeting with the Immediate Pass Seed Vice Chair Asukar from UC Santa Barbara to discuss like campus and system-wide like NAGPRA chairs and like mobilization and accountability efforts. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. Next we have Diego.
Wow, I'm like blown away. Hi everyone. This week and the past week, I helped out with ARC interviews. I onboarded my chief of staff and I'm preparing to interview 2 applicants for the director positions this week and 2 more the following week. I met with the Hispanic Serving Institution team, including Director Elizabeth Gonzalez, Project Analysis Maria Alexia, and student liaisons Daniela Cortez and Kimberly Barapueta. We discussed the logistics of the Latino Resource Center, student engagement through the GR1 office, and coordinating with future student advisory board for the LRC, and coordinated a preliminary meeting with IVP Josh and the HSI team to plan a presentation by the student liaisons to present to council August 20th. And again, thank you, Javier. I attended the Student Organizing Summit with EVP and UCSA and met with UCSA board members to discuss potential opportunities for increase in basic needs resources and expand labor education for student workers with EVP Operations Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Diego. Next, we have Tommy.
All right, so over the last 2 weeks, I onboarded and held my first meeting with my executive staff members. There we discussed our goals and initiatives for the 2024-2025 academic year. As Javi and Diego mentioned, I attended the UCSA Student Organizing Summit with fellow student organizers and student government officials from across the UC system. I also met with Kiara and the Student Wellness Commissioner, Student Wellness Commissioner, to begin preliminary planning on our first collaboration of the year. Topics included safe sex, sexual health, care, and Title IX. And our preliminary plan is to hold this event hopefully within the first couple weeks of fall quarter.
Thank you. Chris Ramsey.
Hey everyone. So firstly, I spoke to Shimona, who's to me the ISR Chief of Staff, about continuing the Bruin Buddies program. So this is a collaboration that used to be between the GR3 and ISR offices last year. So we want to bring it back and expand upon it. So we developed a plan for summer and early fall, began some prep work, including a sign-up form, and reaching out to the DSU Center. Also, I conducted some interviews for the executive director and director appointments in the GR3 office. The GR3 rolling application form is currently public on my Instagram, and I'll be putting out an announcement graphic for that soon.
Thank you, Chris. Next, we have Chris Espino.
Hello, everyone. I'm not gonna give a report today. People can read them via my written comments on directly on the agenda.
Thank you. We have Robbie.
Hi everyone. Just continuing to work on Bruin Bash with the CEC team and the CAC team.
Thank you, Carden.
Hey, just working on planning our fall events, so Volunteer Day, Roxy Fest, as well as Gen Retreat. We're also looking at booking venues for all of these events as well, onboarding all of our directors, and yeah, you can feel free to read my full report. Don't want to take up too much time.
Thanks, Carden. Alicia's updates are going to be written. Alex isn't here. Nico.
Hi everyone. FSC has been interviewing people for all directors and staff positions, and that's been going well. And then also I've been reaching out to the Bruin Card office to see about restarting the discounted Bruin Card replacement Bruin Card fee waiver project.
Thanks, Nico. We have Kiara.
Hi, everyone. I'll just hit some of the main points. So I met with the UCLA Co-op to discuss how SWC can increase support them with funding to provide more free fresh food opportunities for students on campus. As Tommy said, we met to discuss a collaboration regarding sexual health and services on campus for fall quarter. I attended a meeting with the UCLA Healthy Campus Climate Committee, talking more about integrating wellness within academics, something I'm also talking about with Chris Espino in the coming weeks, which is exciting. And then I'll also be going to a meeting tomorrow with HCI, with the executive director of the California Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission, where some will be discussing like the scope of their work and how we can integrate a work that the larger commission for California is doing across UC campuses, which is a grant that they're working on. And yeah, currently just boosting appointment apps and working on those. And then last thing I want to highlight is we're currently working on Health Coming, which is our health-based festival currently, typically around week 3 of fall quarter. And I just wanted to also share that if anyone is interested in being a part of that, talking about any health services or wellness pertaining to maybe your office or student populations you represent, or would like to share about any representation you think would be important to have there, feel free to reach out. And yeah, currently working with our directors, such as our marketing team, to prepare for the upcoming year.
Thanks, Kiara. Next, we have TSR Mono.
Yeah, so for the majority of my officer report, you can read the written report. But I just really wanted to quickly touch on something that I think is super important, and Javier also brought up regarding masks. I think it's super important that considering both the mask bans that have been brought up in conversation across the country and even here in California, to also remember that COVID is like a very impactful disease, and there's a COVID surge happening this summer as well. So it is really important that we kind of mask both to protect ourselves as individuals and to protect the most vulnerable members of our community, because even when someone does mask, if someone that's close to them doesn't mask, they can still get sick as well. And that actually happened to me a little while back, and that impacted my own ability to do stuff. And so I just kind of wanted to know just how important it is to mask, and for all of us to consider this, especially as we do approach the fall, and how we'll be spending time together, perhaps several hours at a time together weekly, just for us to consider this and how that'll impact ourselves as individuals, as like a council together, and how that could also spread within our own offices and to the other members of the community that we interact with at UCLA. Yeah, but everything else that like I did as TSR, you can read on my officer report.
Last but not least, we have Tamim.
Thank you. You can read my officer reports, but I want to highlight a few things. We started initiating the process of broadening career resources to cover international job markets like that in Asia, Africa, South America, and Europe, in addition to the US job market. We also had the flyaway bus meeting with FAC Alexandra, Sam Nahidi from the Dashi Center, Karen from Student Affairs, Michael from Res Life, and Clinton from Bench. We basically discussed about student transportation between LAX and UCLA and how to make it more accessible for the international community. HHS, which is Housing and Hospitality, will be running the LAX shuttle again this Thanksgiving break, so that is there. And transportation is going to work on making UPass timeline more accessible for undocumented as well as international students. As Gen Rep 3 Chris already mentioned, Shimona from my office is already working on Bruin Buddies proposal, and that will be in fruition for the fall quarter. We also had a meeting with Nikkei Student Union, and we are excited to work with them. All the detailed reports will be in my written officer report, so feel free to glance over them. We are also collaborating with T-Mobile. So we met with Jonathan, and we'll be having a meeting tomorrow to discuss T-Mobile setting up a booth at UCLA so that international community and the international student population can get their SIM card as soon as they land in the United States. And we also attended the CRC meeting, and I worked on a bylaw change, which will be discussed later. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamim. We're now going to move on to admin reps, starting with Orlando.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing really well. No updates.
Thanks, Orlando. Next, we have Jessica.
Hi, everybody. So the only short updates that I have to share with you, the first one is that we plan to close SGA for a week from August 19th through the 23rd. So we're not going to do a check run that week, and we're going to actually like be closed to the public just so that we can prepare to transition everything over into the new fiscal year, complete closing requirements so we can get ready for audit. Just a lot of administrative work that needs to be done that we can't really do while maintaining daily processing. So to prepare for that, we'll go ahead and also put signage out on the door, but just wanted you all to be aware. And then any last remaining checks that we've printed, we'll try to mail everything out so that folks can still get their checks since we won't be available for a check pickup that week. So wanted to share that. And then the other update that I had next, hopefully by the next USAC meeting, I'm gonna bring to you some budget adjustments that we had to input just from a couple things that have come up since we've approved the budget. So, you know, I'll prepare that with Stephen, and I'll circulate that ahead of the meeting, and then, you know, fill you in on what it is. But there's also a couple depreciation line items that we weren't initially aware of that now we know has to be part of the budget. So we're just gonna put it in that revised column, and I'll share those updates with you hopefully at the next meeting. So I'll coordinate with Josh to get on the agenda for that. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.
Hi, all. It's very weird to be back. I haven't seen y'all since June. That was really weird. Okay, I'm just looking through my screen. Adam, love the Insta giveaway of the jersey. That is awesome. So fun. Even my students in my office are talking about it, so nice job. Tamim, has Megan reached back out to you about cricket? No. Okay. I will poke her. She just got back from the Olympics, so a lot of Olympics things happening, and it just dawned on me like 4 years from today, I will be working at the Olympics. Weird. Let's see who else. Oh, Robbie and Alicia, after our meeting, I just had a volunteer opportunity come about, perhaps to help with check-in at EAF. So we can talk about that at our next Brew and Bash meeting next week. And then for those of you who have not switched over signatory, as my message in Slack, reach out to Orlando and I so we can connect you to your Soul Advisor so you can get at least one flipped over before fall so you're ready to go. And then if you need any spaces at Recreation for the fall, we are opening on August 21st, and I will put the procedures in Slack for y'all to get an account and get going on that. That's it.
Thank you, and Jonathan.
Oh, it's dark. Hello. What's up? Not much from me today. Loved seeing a lot of your funding body appointments on this agenda today. I want to encourage you to keep that up, particularly those CAC annual ones where their decision timeline, where they actually do allocations, is this month. So those are coming up quick. And do also particularly want to poke you on a budget review director, so that BOD, the My UCLA application can get finalized sooner rather than later. And then speaking of funding, it was great to hear from Javier that they're already thinking about it. If you have a funding body of any sort, you need to get those guidelines reapproved by council before applications open. You cannot open applications without approved guidelines from council. So I highly recommend doing that sooner rather than later, because I'm sure a lot of your funding bodies are going to want to at least be open by the time fall starts, if not already starting to award by time fall starts. So please get those revised and on the agenda sooner rather than later. Other than that, I'm back in my office. I was getting a little upgrade in that space, so feel free to come by. I have a couch now. Robbie got to experience it today. He was the first, and it's a good setup. So come by anytime. If you need me, you know how to reach me.
Thank you, Jonathan. We are now going to move on to new business, starting with the OSAC allocations. So finally, after a couple months of work, we have our final OSAC allocations. Big thank you to Jonathan, Jessica, and Alex. Hopefully you all already reviewed it, but basically we reviewed all the applications I got in, both digital and physical, and we allocated office space according to each organization's needs and wants. So I'll give everyone like a minute to review it. There's not much to review because everything's pretty much set, but we just have to vote on it. Okay, could someone please motion to approve the OSAC? Or does anyone have any questions beforehand? Sorry. Questions or concerns? Yes, Mona.
So I'm looking at like the spreadsheet, and For the allocations, like the very first one on the list is the MSA, and it's like a shade of green. But it's like a slightly different shade of green from the key. I was just wondering if that means like it's a
The same
different.
green. No, same green.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make
No
sure.
problem, no problem. Any other questions? Perfect. Could we please get a motion to approve the OSAC allocations? Tamim,
Motion to approve the OSAC allocations.
A second.
Tamim motions, Josh seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands now. Please lower your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And all abstaining, please raise your hands. With an 11-0 vote, that motion passes and the OSAC allocations are allocated. We're now going to move on to an Article 4 bylaw change by Tamim. You can just read through it or summarize it according to your purview.
Sure. I just want to read the rationale first, and then I can go through the entire thing. So the rationale behind the bylaw change is that ISLC, which stands for International Student Leadership Coalition, is not operational in 2024. The ISWEL Committee, or the International Student Wellness Committee, is an active member of the CAPS unit, whose sole purpose is addressing the mental well-being of international students. Engraving this in the bylaws will ensure that the collaboration between the Office of International Student Representative and CAPS is continued in the future. The changes we made was ISR should offer support to the CAPS International Student Wellness Committee as well through sending at least one representative, in brackets, example, the Director of Student Wellness, to the ISWEL meetings at least once per quarter, just so that you all know that ISWEL committee meetings are only once every quarter, unless they have emergency meetings. The second is promoting events and initiatives through its networks. And the third is leveraging the advocacy work of ISWEL by connecting it to relevant administrators. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Any questions for Tamim? Perfect. We'll now move on to the two next bylaw changes by me. The first one is an Article 2 bylaw change. Basically, we're just adding some new appointments into the bylaws, and they are the Data Governance Committee and Academic Technology Committee. Does anyone have any questions on those? And these are going to be presidential appointments, if anyone was wondering. Okay, perfect. We are now going to go to the second bylaw change, which is revamping all of OSAC. I think everyone should read through this because it's pretty important. But basically, we're getting rid of all the old OSAC bylaw guidelines, and we're creating a new revamped OSAC. This was done in collaboration with Alex and Jonathan and Jessica. So basically, we were at risk of losing a lot of our office space because of a lack of upkeep and maintenance and fire hazards and a bunch of stuff. So it's important that we revamp OSAC. One, to make sure allocations get out in time, because a lot of the times they don't. For example, now we were 3 months late to get allocations out. And two, we want to ensure that all offices are kept neat and serve their purpose as offices and not storage units. So just a quick run through. OSAC will consist of OP, FAC, and then 3 non-permanent rotating USAC officers, very similar to how ARC or CRC works at the beginning of the year. Will appoint certain council members to OSAC. Then just how OSAC's gonna work. Feel free to read some basic stuff. We're also we're hiring a new student staff member that's gonna be responsible solely to maintaining and making sure that all student organizations are using their offices appropriately. This includes any fire hazards that we should look out for, proper disposal of waste, and just making sure that the office is upkept. And then here's just a brief outline of the responsibilities that OSAC should have. So allocations happen every 2 years. So during the allocation year, it's going to be OSAC's responsibility to solicit, to review, and then allocate space. And then in the off years, it's going to be OSAC's responsibility to upkeep and make sure that all the spaces are being used appropriately. Are there any questions on that? Questions. Josh?
I don't have a question personally, but Alex wanted me to read something out on behalf of her tonight. Is it okay if I share it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is all from Alex. She said, I support the OSAC bylaw change due to the greater operational oversight from the commission and integration into the President's and Facilities Commission's office. Student organizations needing office and storage space should have been faced with operational and outreach issues from OSAC for many years, indicating a change in structure is needed to address this issue. Integrating this process into a USAC committee will allow greater access to support for students from our own offices and student government support staff. In this new committee, I plan for us to address storage and fire code issues, day-to-day operational issues, and the application process that all affect students' long-term access to these facilities.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing as there are none, we'll move on, and I officially adjourn today's meeting at 9:11 p.m. Thank you all so much for coming. Is there an earthquake? I don't feel it.
The entire office was shaking. It's crazy.
My office was also shaking while I was reading that statement.
Okay, thank you all. Good night. See you in 2 weeks.
Good night, everyone.
See everyone.